is.
Creep Away Camp, a new SpongeBob Halloween special, now streaming on Paramount+.
Wake up, it's game day here on CBS Sports HQ as we welcome you into college football pregame presented by Hellmann's, America's #1 mayonnaise. I'm Jordan Giorgio alongside quite the crew here. We've got Damien Harris, we've got Mackenzie Brooks, Danny Kanell, and Bryant McFadden in the building, in the flesh for the very first time. Thanks so much for starting your college football Saturday with us. Get comfortable because we're taking you all the way up to noon kickoffs. You know, I was wondering if you guys were going to be okay in between this Seminole sandwich right now that's going on. But, like, you have a bone to pick with these two, missing out on team dinner last night. What's up with that?
Man, we did some nice team bonding.
And they said,
dinner.
Not for me.
We were right on the beach, and then these two guys over here just decided,
I got a late invite. I got a late invite.
This is true.
I got a late invite, too.
That's true.
But he missed initiation. Like, it was.
Yeah, he did. But you're to your defense.
Make me pay for it just to try.
Definitely. Are you kidding me? Look at that fit. I need to know. I need to know what's going on.
What that say up there on the lapel? It says BMAC, don't it? Come on.
Custom lapel pin right there. Can't hide that money.
We were kind of disappointed with you two. We know you were golfing yesterday. But listen, you're telling us it's Sober October. I want to know how many transfusions you actually had in the course.
Well, you know, watching Florida State last night really made October challenging, but I did survive.
All right, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Well, before we get into all of that Week 8 offers, let's go ahead and show you an injury report of all the notable injuries for today. We'll continue to keep you posted on everything if anything changes, especially for those who are listed as questionable and a game time decision. We begin with Florida quarterback Graham Mertz, who will miss the remainder of the season after tearing his ACL versus Tennessee last week. The 6-year senior had been sharing snaps with freshman DJ Lagway, who will now take on full-time duty starting today against Kentucky. Danny.
Yeah, I hate this for Graham Mertz. Obviously, you see a player who's, was a transfer in there, really played solid, didn't get the results in the win column, but I do think he was a great mentor, and as much as I hated them rolling in two quarterbacks, now it actually serves to their benefit because DJ Lagway actually has a ton of experience, and Billy Napier can maybe potentially try to save his job with a glimpse of the future. DJ Lagway is really, really talented young player. Excited to see what he can do for the Gators.
Us too. Well, meanwhile, Georgia Tech will be without their quarterback, Haynes King, against 12th-ranked Notre Dame today. Our own Matt Zenitz reports that. BMAC, how do you see this impacting this Georgia Tech offense?
This is will be a huge impact when you look at Haynes King, his ability to be a big-time dual-threat runner. They really benefit from that when it comes to running the football, tops in the ACC and rushing. So when you add Zach Pyron to the fold, he's not the athlete that Haynes King is. So there could be a dip in production against the Fighting Irish when it comes to running the football. All
right, lastly, Damien Zenitz also reporting that Missouri leading rusher Nate Noel is trending towards playing against Auburn today, and that is big if he does for the Tigers.
Yeah, that'll be huge for Missouri, especially because when you look at what Brady Cook has done at quarterback, he's been average all year with superstar talent at receiver. So having a guy like Nate Noel that can run the ball, that can make you two-dimensional, that's going to be paramount for this Missouri team that's been stalling over the past couple weeks.
Noel missed last week's win over UMass. He has 471 yards and 2 touchdowns this season, so that'll be big. More injuries, you guys, we are monitoring today. Colorado two-way star Travis Hunter, good news, is expected to play today against Arizona later this afternoon, and the same goes for Missouri wide receiver Luther Burden. Danny, I know that's big. And in that huge Texas-Georgia game, Longhorns receiver you see there, Isaiah Bond, is probable with an ankle injury, while Georgia will once again be without linebacker Smile Mondin. What a name that is. All right, we're going to get into more about what we're watching for and how significant a lot of these injuries could be later on, but we have to talk about the thriller that was last night. BYU in the game-winning drive, just the final seconds of the game, defeating Oklahoma State. Danny, how was BYU able to keep their undefeated season alive?
Oh, I know you guys were all still partying watching this.
We were.
Finished. But this was phenomenal. BYU is quickly becoming the story. I know Mackenzie wants to shoot it down and just crush their playoff hopes, but yet they keep winning and winning and adding to that resume. Jake Retzlaff, who's self-proclaimed BY Jew, he's a hungry. It's a really fun story about this unlikely crazy pairing of him being at a Mormon school, but they are playing really good football. Thing that's crazy is some BYU fans even potentially had Kalani Sitake on the hot seat coming into the season. They've already surpassed their win total. It's been phenomenal.
How much clearer, Mackenzie, did this Big 12 race really become after last night's win?
Not clear at all, actually.
Watch, here she goes.
Here we go. Let it rip.
Lay it out, Ken. Lay it out. Paint a picture.
Here's the thing. You look at the top 3 runners right now. We're talking about the race to the Big 12. Iowa State, we give the best chance to make the playoff. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the best chance to win the conference, but we do think they, A, could win the conference, B, have that at-large bid. So that's why they have that buffer. Our situation with Kansas State is we believe they will win the Big 12 conference. That's why we still have BYU with less than a 20% chance to win the conference, less than a 30% chance to make the playoffs. So while I do understand, I want to give BYU their flowers for what they've been doing, but it feels like an unsustainably high success rate in clutch situations that it's hard to believe that just continues to happen. And you look at odds makers, they agree. They have them at longer odds to win the Big 12. They have them at longer odds to win the playoff, or excuse me, make the playoff. Let's not get too crazy here.
Right, I was going to say.
At some point, it feels like this runs out. Now, the second half of their schedule was supposed to be, a really hard schedule. You had Big 12, winners here, projected winners. You had Kansas, you had Utah. Those teams could likely have just given up, which would favor BYU. Cam Rising, who knows what his deal is? Who knows if they're throwing in the towel? So BYU's success to me, the second half of the season relies on if those other opponents want to show up. And there is a good chance they don't want to. So who am I to say?
It has been cool to see BYU kind of work their way up the rankings in the AP Top 25 poll each and every week. I know where you stand on this. You believe that BYU would be a top 3 team if they were in the SEC and Big Ten. I saw you tweet that out just recently.
Resume. I don't think they would be a top 3 team in the SEC. I think they would be a top 5 ranked team because of the brand bias that goes into it. They've got 2 wins over current top 25 teams. It's been phenomenal, and they absolutely have a better resume than LSU or Tennessee, where like Tennessee's best win was NC State, which at the time we thought it was really good, and then all of a sudden NC State comes collapsing. It's like, okay, that wasn't as impressive. But this is what happens with teams that start way outside in the preseason rankings and expectations. You have to do almost double of what teams that come in with hype and expectations and brand awareness. They're doing it. So that's the best part about it, is you can play your way in. It's just that much harder, and people like Ken's keep doubting you. I'm like her, though. I do think it is. I don't think it continues. I like those other 2 teams better. But, man, keep this story going, because it's what we love. It's like a Cinderella story during the season.
Most definitely. It's been fun to watch this BYU team. Well, last night we also got to see Dylan Gabriel and the Oregon Ducks shut out Purdue. What has Gabriel been able to do just the past few weeks, Damien, to really reassert himself in this Heisman Trophy race? I
mean, he's just been playing at a high level, and he's been incredibly productive. And I know we've talked a lot, especially on this show, about, well, we're not seeing the huge plays from Oregon. We're not seeing the big explosive plays. But what we are seeing is Dylan Gabriel making the right decision, making the right throw. They're giving him easy access throws, and then he can use his legs. He can, throw the ball down the field if he needs to. They've got a great running game. So they really just found their stride. I mean, you saw it last night. He was 21 for 25 with almost 300 yards and a couple touchdowns. So this offense is really clicking on all cylinders. That win against Ohio State really helped them out, because, we were looking at Ohio State as one of the best defenses in the country. Oregon's offense, they handled it just fine. So now they're just building week after week after week. And like I said, they've really found their groove as of recently.
Before we get into his odds right now to win the Heisman with Mackenzie, B-Mac, where does Dylan Gabriel just make it so tough on defenses?
His experience. I mean, it feels like he's been in college football since 2015. I mean, he's been around a long, long time, and he's seen a lot, and now we're starting to see that experience displayed on the football field in a consistent way. The issue for Dylan Gabriel, when he started the season with Oregon, Danny, you can talk about this, just trying to get acclimated to this new offense. When you look at what he did last season for Oklahoma, that's why he was the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman, making that transfer to Oregon because of what he did. It took some time for him to get accustomed to the offense. Now he's settled in, and now he's able to showcase what type of player he can be. And I can tell you this much, he is the one player they want to win the Heisman.
Right. Yeah.
One big game, and instantly his odds have surpassed everyone. So clearly this is the guy most feel like should win if he continues to play to the level that he's been playing at. And most importantly, they win ball games. It might be his award to lose.
Danny? Go ahead.
I totally agree with everything you said. I think the difference, too, is the offensive line, which they were dealing with issues, too. Injury issues, figuring out the right combinations. They've gotten healthier. They've figured out a rotation where they've actually stuck with the same 5 guys. I think that has been huge for the Ducks. And then it gives Dillon Gabriel time to, go in. So also getting used to the system, people were panicking when it was Idaho and Boise State and they were escaping with these wins. They won. That's all that mattered. And I think there was no panic within that building because they trusted the resume of Dillon Gabriel. The thing that might help him massively in the Heisman, wait till we start seeing some of his numbers approach all-time college football, career numbers. That shouldn't matter, but unfortunately it does, and it sometimes can become a lifetime achievement award. And if he's on the quarterback of a national championship contending team, that helps too.
Well, B-Mac, you mentioned it. He was our front runner to win the Heisman heading into this season. Now he's with the second best odds. That's behind your guy, Ashton Genty. What does his path look like now as we put a bow on this?
The problem with being so far ahead or being first, second shortest odds is you don't really have a ton of upside at that point, right? It's really just a lot to lose, not a lot to gain, especially when the guy in front of you isn't even playing this weekend. So he did, after last night, after shutting out Purdue, as he should have, stays at plus 260. We didn't see his odds shift. However, if you see some of these SEC quarterbacks, even Cam Ward, start to lose today and start to cancel each other out, now that could potentially start to take him from plus 260 to maybe plus 200. So he took care of what was in his control. Now it's hoping that some of these other quarterbacks start to shoot themselves in the foot and keep him at the top of this race.
Yeah, he's praying for that. All right, you guys, we have a ton of games to get to, including the biggest one in the SEC, a showdown between Georgia and Texas. It's a game that we've looked forward to for so long here. Is it a must-win game for Georgia, in your opinion, Damien?
It is a must-win, but it's not because of the 12-team playoff. They can lose, and they can still very well get into the playoffs. For me, this is about the vibes in the locker room. This is about your team morale. You don't want to be going into the end of the season, going into the 12-team playoff, potentially an SEC championship with 2, 3 losses. Like, you want to be able to bank on your experiences throughout the year where you win and you put out your best performance week after week after week. So to me, if Kirby Smart in Georgia loses this team, you'll have 2 losses, both SEC losses, which, let's not forget, I don't think Kirby Smart has won a game on the road versus a top 10 team in his career at Georgia. So this is going to be a statement game for Georgia, for Kirby Smart, and really just for the vibes, because Kenzie's going to talk about it. They can very much lose and still have a playoff spot, but I think for the sake of the makeup of your team and the spirit of the guys and your leaders, like, you don't want to go into the end of the season thinking, okay, well, we've lost a couple games, we escaped, but we're still here, so now we're just going to turn it on. You guys know it doesn't work that way. Each and every single week, you got to go out and provide your best performance, and you have to play game after game after game at a high level. That way, once you get to the end of the season, then when things start to get tough, when the X's and O's break down, when the game plan might break down, then you can revert back to some of your experiences throughout the year.
Huge for vibes in the locker room. I'm sure you guys can agree with the former players on set, but from a technical standpoint, Kens, is it win or go home for your Dogs?
Absolutely not. First off, horns down, go Dogs. Big day. Second of all, we have consistently week after week. Now the top 12 change, our projected playoff changes every week, but we are consistently finding that the 2 seed likely has a worse chance of making the championship game than the 5 and 6 seed. That 5-6 seed spot becomes so favorable. That is bearing injury. If you are a team that needs to get healthy and needs that bye week, that's a different story. But Georgia would likely either stay around the 6 seed if it's a really great loss, right? Something about them losing to Bama. If it's a bad loss, they'll probably go to that 10 seed, and that's a different story. But Alabama's, Georgia's, you're talking about it. When you have such a high preseason expectation, it is so hard to knock these teams. Bama's, Georgia's, these are teams that can afford 1, 2, 3 losses. And we've run the numbers of what are the odds that X, Y, and Z team can stay in that 1 to 3 loss range. And Georgia has a very high chance of that. Bama has a very high chance of that. So 4 specific teams like that, 4 teams in the SEC with a really strong strength of schedule, you have a lot more wiggle room. And I don't know if that's what they meant to do with the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, possibly. We'll see. All right, well, it's going to be a game that we learn a lot about both of these teams. We're just getting started. I want to hear from these two and what they have to say about this game. We are just getting started. Hour 1 of our 3-hour pregame coverage here on CBS Sports HQ is underway. When we come back, there is straight chaos in the SEC with 6 teams having 1 loss. So is there a world where a 3-loss SEC team makes the college football playoff? We tell you next. Here on College Football Pregame, time now for Mayotivations, presented by Hellmann's, America's #1 mayonnaise, and it is straight chaos in the SEC right now as you take a look at all of the teams who have just one loss on the season. Now, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, and Tennessee each have one loss, and 3 of the 4 could have 2 after today's games wrap up. It seems like there is just a 4-team playoff within the SEC alone right now, Mackenzie.
It feels like if you are an SEC team that wants to feel confident that you are going to make this playoff, you have got to cap your losses at 3. And that's just to stay in the conversation.
Crazy. That is
What are we talking about?
Did we get a reaction? Did we get a reaction?
This is to be in the conversation. Look, you have Texas who's not going to get there. You have Georgia who likely won't get there. Bama potentially could get there, but they will do everything they could to keep Bama in this playoff. Now, hear me out, guys.
Okay.
We ranked your percent chance to have less than 3 losses, right? So it goes Texas, Georgia, Bama, and then we're tied LSU, Texas A&M. Tennessee, we don't really put in this conversation because they have a pretty tough schedule ahead. Now, when it comes to LSU and Texas A&M, we're in the same spot. They play each other later in the season. So this will be a head-to-head battle that really tells us who that 4th team could be. If LSU wins, they knock Texas A&M to the bottom of that. So it does become a 4-team playoff within just the SEC to make the conference championship. Odds makers project them to have 4 SEC teams. I think it'll probably be 4, depending on what happens with Notre Dame. That line is set like it's going to be 4 SEC teams.
You've left all these gentlemen on set. Flabbergasted. You should have seen B-Mac's face when you went off on your reasoning there. What is the problem with allowing a 3-loss team to make the playoff?
Well, I think when you look in totality, it just allows mediocrity to slip into these programs. Because I go back to what I said earlier. You're going to the playoffs where you're thinking, okay, I can lose 3 games. Well, next year when Kirby Smart and Georgia start the season, is he going to be telling his team, okay, well, yeah, we can lose 3 games and we can still make the playoffs? Well, what does that do? That creates complacency. That creates a lack of urgency at the start of the season and in the middle of the season. Then you're just like you said, you're capping your losses. You're like, okay, we lost 1 game here. Okay, we win a couple. 2 weeks later, okay, we lost this one. But we got 2 losses. We're capped at 3. If we get 1 more, we can still probably get in. That just allows so much mediocrity, complacency, the ability to not go out and play your best every single week. That's my biggest problem whenever you have all of these teams who can lose all these games and we're still talking about them being playoff and national championship contenders.
I have to preface, it's 2 specific teams. You can't just go out and lose to Mississippi State. Now, if you have the Bamas beating the Tennessees and the Tennessees beating the Georgias and the Georgias beating the Tech, that's where we're having this conversation.
Yes.
Who did Bama lose to?
Listen.
Oh, they didn't lose to Vanderbilt. And you know what's else in it? But Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. Like there's some teams that have bad losses.
And they're very well in this playoff conversation.
I wouldn't say 0% chance. I think it's a very, very slim chance that a 3-loss SEC team or any team in the country gets into the playoff. I think 2 would be the number. But here's kind of what I wanted to talk about when we were talking about Georgia, and is this a must-win for them?
Yeah.
I think one depends on the style of the game. Like if they lose by double digits, if it's a 10-point loss or a 14-point loss, then it's maybe, and they could still be 10-2 or a 2-loss team, but maybe Georgia wasn't as good as we thought they were. Like if they were, they would be winning these games, and they would have not looked awful against Bama in that first half. They wouldn't have looked awful against Kentucky. They wouldn't have given up 31 points versus Mississippi State. So at some point, you can only live off your preseason expectations for so long, and this is what irritates me sometimes is that SEC teams, because there is a lot of preseason expectations, they get that pass. Well, it was Texas. It was a tough loss. You know, it was Bama. It's a tough loss. And they don't get criticized as much as other programs do. There's no doubt if they do lose close and they win out, I think they're in. I don't think it's a question. But if they lose, I think it should bring in the question, maybe Georgia wasn't as good as we thought they were.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I think it is a must-win for Georgia, and here's why. You already have 1 loss on your record right now, right? And if you lose again today, and I understand the committee, fans will say it's a good loss. That's one thing I hate about college football. There's no such thing as a good loss.
Thank you,
loss is a loss.
Thank you, B-Mac.
I don't care who you lose to. When you lose, it's bad, right? But in college football, in our world in college football, well, that's a good loss. Okay, cool. We got to live with the adjusting times. But if you lose today, now you put more pressure on being flawless the rest of the way. You still have to travel to Ole Miss, and Ole Miss has looked a bit rocky, but at any given time, Jackson Dart and that offense can light it up. And then you also have Tennessee left on your schedule, and then your rival, Georgia Tech, who's currently sitting at 5-2. So if you lose today, you put more pressure on yourself the rest of the way to not have any mistakes, big or small, because to your point, then you would have a third loss. And now that puts more pressure on the committee to say, hey, our darlings of the season, they have 3 losses. How can we find a way to justify those 3 losses to get them to the playoffs?
Right. I'm not here to tell you it's a just system here. I'm just here to play the game that they're giving us here. And even looking at the screen, you look at their current playoff chances. If you lose this game, you just become a little bit less of a lock to make the playoffs. You know, it seems like they still have a really high chance. Now that can be different if you become a 2-loss or a 3-loss Georgia team or a 2-loss Texas team. But however, you look at the top of the SEC, like they're benefiting from LSU and Texas A&M, and they're butting heads, and they'll take care of each other, and that lets Georgia and Bama and Texas sit pretty at the top. So there are a lot of things going their way, and I'm totally on board with it's these preseason notions that makes it so hard to knock these teams.
Do you want me to throw you a bone and help you out? All right,
yes.
Because I'll give the path for a 3-loss Georgia to make it.
Let's hear it.
Let's say they lose today close to Texas.
Right.
Let's say they lose to Tennessee, and assume Tennessee beats Alabama, which I don't even want to bring that up for you.
Like, I thought
we still got about 2 more hours.
throwing shade at me to throw Kins a bone. That's crazy.
But it's another close loss, right? Even though it's at home. So they're sitting at 9-3. But Clemson wins the ACC and is a top 4 seed. And they smoked Clemson. So then what do you do if you're the committee? Like, oh, well, Georgia, how can Clemson be in the playoffs and Georgia's not? I don't have a problem with it because it was earlier and it was like teams change and you find out more, and Clemson's way better, I think. But I think that's the scenario for a 9-3 Georgia to get in the playoff, is if they can always hold that Clemson win as a signature win.
That would mean if that was to happen in that hypothetical, the SEC could have 6 teams get in.
Well, see, that's the
thing.
dynamic.
Exactly.
Because if you talk about the teams that have 1 loss currently, remember A&M, and LSU, they currently have no loss in conference play.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's a major factor right now. Yes, they've lost, but A&M lost to Notre Dame, and LSU lost to USC. So granted, those 2 teams will play each other, but if one of those teams, don't have a loss outside their head-to-head matchup, they will only have 2 losses. So that means they're getting in for sure.
They have to.
They have to. Then when you look at what Alabama might potentially do, or Tennessee, if one of those teams have 2 losses, they're getting in for sure. So if you're finding a way to get Georgia in, and to your point, I can see that actually happening.
Right.
But that means 2 other teams will get in.
6 SEC teams.
6 SEC teams will get in.
And then, to your point, then people are going to be mad because then we're going to be sitting here talking about, oh, well, the SEC gets a pass. Well, the SEC this, the SEC, they think they're so good. They've got all these losses, but they got 6 teams in. Then that's just going to fuel the argument that you just started.
But that I can legit see the committee valuing Georgia's schedule just as Danny laid it out for us. Well, they beat Clemson, but look what Clemson did.
Right.
Well, they lost to Alabama, but look what Alabama did. And well, look at Texas. Look at the teams they beat and how good they've been. And Texas finishes the season number 1 or number 2. That actually helps UGA's case to get in. But that could happen. 6 SEC teams in a 12-team playoff.
What if it does?
That's
What if
it.
it does?
Actually have a heart attack.
And the Big 12.
Hold on.
Yeah.
If that does happen, then tell us about the Big 12.
Teams like the conferences like the Big 12 get screwed. They're probably going to take the conference champion. They're only going to take the conference champion.
The same will be said for the ACC. Yep.
If you do, we try to math it out. Okay, what do odds makers really think is going to happen? How many teams from each conference? You'd likely have 4 SEC teams, 3 Big 10 teams, and then between the Big 12, the ACC, and Notre Dame, that's 4 other spots. And then you likely have that the non-power conference, but probably Boise State. So you got Notre Dame grouped in with probably 2 ACC teams and 2 Big 12 teams. Between that conference and Notre Dame, those 2 conferences, those are the teams that are going to get screwed, I think.
It would be chaotic. So many different scenarios. My head hurts at this moment, and we still have 2 hours left in this show. All right, we're just getting started. It's college football. Anything can happen. We know that for sure. Quick break for us here on College Football Pregame on CBS Sports HQ. When we return, it's time to make some game picks for the midday games, including Notre Dame taking on Georgia Tech and the Star. The Yellow Jackets will be without. That's next. Back here on college football pregame, and we have a solid midday slate today that includes number 12 Notre Dame traveling to Atlanta's Mercedes-Benz Stadium today, marking the 38th college football meeting between the Irish and Georgia Tech. Here is a look at the notable injuries to play a role in this one from Mercedes-Benz Stadium at a neutral site today. Most notable loss you see there to the Yellow Jackets. Danny, quarterback Haynes King out for today's matchup.
I hate this. Full disclosure, on the Cover 3 Locks pod, I picked Georgia Tech to cover because I assumed Haynes King was playing. This is a really big loss. He's mobile. He's a veteran. He's played a lot of football. This is a tough loss for Georgia Tech.
Yeah, and the Fighting Irish have plenty of injuries as well. As you see, their top cornerback Benjamin Morrison was lost for the season this week with a hip injury. B-Mac, how big of a hit is that for Notre Dame's defense?
That's a huge hit. We have to remember Notre Dame, they were already dealing with a lot of injuries on the defensive side, and now you add Benjamin Morrison, a guy who was a preseason All-American. This will be felt more so the rest of the way. In today's matchup, when you look at Georgia Tech's offense, they rely more so on running the football, especially with Haynes King not being involved. I don't expect them to see a more aggressive style throwing the football. So for Notre Dame, they can weather the storm not having Benjamin in the lineup today. But when you look at going forward and trying to get into the playoffs, when you're playing against more pass-oriented offenses, there lies the opportunity to feel his loss not being in the lineup.
Most definitely. All right, you guys, time to get in a game pick for this one from Atlanta. We turn things over to Mackenzie Brooks here. Mackenzie, Irish have won three of the last three meetings, the last one by 55 points. They're right now a 13.5-point favorite today with the points sitting at 49.5. What's your best play?
We're isolating the Fighting Irish here, and we continue to do it successfully every week, going with their team total over. Now, it doesn't look like a ton of value, but 32 points is certainly something they're capable of. Gone 31+ in 3 of their last 4 games, while Georgia Tech, although this is, an improved defense from last year, they're still allowing over 31 in 3 of their last 4 games as well. We talk about this quarterback injury situation we're dealing with. No King today. That is a massive drop-off at quarterback for this team. I have a hard time believing Georgia Tech can stay on the field as an offense for very long. I think Notre Dame will have plenty of time and still just trying to get style points, recover from that upset they had earlier in the year. So it is 4 quarters of strong football for Notre Dame.
Well, like Danny, full disclosure, I actually picked Georgia Tech to pull off the upset today, but with no Haynes King, I mean, it's hard for me to find a way for Georgia Tech to win this game. So I've got to go Notre Dame. It's not because I think Notre Dame is exceptional. It's not because I think that without Haynes King, they're the better team. But again, when you're out your starting quarterback, somebody that's a leader, somebody that a guy like Brent Key can really give the keys of the program to and say, listen, we're going to build this around you. We're going to have all the guys emulate your attitude, your leadership, and we're going to build this around you. So without him, it's going to be tough to overcome. I got Notre Dame.
I think Notre Dame wins too. I was trying to think of a play because I told you earlier I took like you, I didn't take the upset, but I took Georgia Tech in the points. I don't want to give out that play now without Haynes King, so I was trying to find a play that made some sense. I'm going to go first half under. I do think you could see both teams' best effort, and with Zach Pyron making his first start in quite some time, he hasn't had a ton of experience. No matter what game plan they have, even against a Notre Dame defense that is decimated, I think Notre Dame will be able to get enough stops early. And then on the flip side, I also think Georgia Tech defense, playing at home, they're playing the Mercedes-Benz Dome there in Atlanta. It's going to be a really big crowd. I think they'll give their best effort slowing down Riley Leonard and that Notre Dame offense. So I think it could start a little slow, and I'll think Georgia Tech keeps it closer in that first half, so I like the first half under.
Clean sweep for me. I'm taking Notre Dame. The sense of urgency has to be there when you look at the makeup in college football trying to get into the playoffs. They cannot afford to have a slow start creep into their game where they're fighting for 4 quarters, and not having Haynes King is definitely a big loss for Georgia Tech. So I'm rolling with Riley Leonard in the Fighting Irish.
All right, you did mention Zach Pyron here. Give us a scouting report, QB to QB. What can we really expect from him today?
So I don't think you get the mobility that you get with Haynes King. Haynes King was very athletic. He could run around, make plays. Zach Pyron, I would picture him more as a game manager, and I think that's the role he'll be in as well for Georgia Tech, handing the football off, getting some play action pass, and I'm sure Brent Key and that staff are going to ask him, hey, don't make the big mistake. By the way, their quarterback coach Chris Weinke,
Chris
former
Weinke.
Florida State.
Yes,
okay.
I'm sure they'll have
I've
him
been
coached up
wondering where
well.
he's been.
Yeah, he's been at Georgia Tech for a couple years. He's done a really good job. I think Zach Power will be ready to go. It is a significant drop-off.
All right, moving on here. Let's go to the annual meeting between Colorado and Arizona, starting with the injuries in this one. And there's some good news for Colorado as they get to a star and Heisman Trophy contender Travis Hunter back. How huge is that?
Well, I mean, it's
the ball.
imperative because he's your best player on offense and on defense. So to have a guy back that can make special plays on both sides of the ball, can give your team a boost, you know, whether it be a game-changing interception, a game-changing fumble recovery, or forced fumble like we saw earlier in the season against Baylor, or he can turn around and have, you know, catch a 5-yard hitch that he ends up taking 80 yards for a touchdown. So having a dynamic game breaker type player like Travis Hunter on both sides of the ball is going to be huge for Colorado today.
Taking a look at the injuries for both teams here, wideout Jimmy Horn Jr. is good to go, but Omarion Miller had a season-ending injury earlier this week for the Buffaloes. For Arizona, though, wideout Raymelo Murphy is questionable to go today, and Tradan Stoops is out for the remainder of this season. All right, let's get a game pick. Mackenzie, Arizona has won the past 2 meetings, but it was close last season just by 3 points. They're favored by 2.5 here. What's the play based on the model?
So I think when we see these injury reports and we see that Travis Hunter, you know, he's likely to play, we forget that that doesn't necessarily mean he's 100%. We forget that that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to have his full snap count that he typically has on both sides of the ball. So what we're able to do in the model is start to downgrade some of these players specifically and maybe not put them at 100%. So given all the receiver injuries in general for Colorado, that's why we do favor Arizona in this game. If you can get plus money on a home dog, I think it's certainly the right place to be, just given the injuries. I don't want to overreact to what is technically happening on the field for Colorado.
I don't know. I like Colorado today, and it's not even because Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
To me, this game is going to be because of Shedeur Sanders, and I don't think that we give this guy enough credit. Week after week after week, he performs and he delivers. We talked about they have no run game. They have no defense. They can't protect him up front. They can't do this. Every single week, Shedeur Sanders shows up and takes care of his business. I think because of him and then having Travis Hunter back, which it's going to be interesting with him coming back from injury. Is he going to play more offense?
Right,
Is he
what do
going to
you
play more
think?
defense?
What would be the right move? Do you limit him? Like almost a pitch count there?
I think they need him on defense more. They've
Okay.
got some weapons. They've got some
I would
good
agree.
receivers.
I would
Do you
agree.
agree with that,
Jimmy
B-Mac?
Horn.
I want to see him on defense going
Yeah.
against T-Mac.
Yeah.
Who's a first-round type wide receiver. This is good on good. I think he will be implemented in the offensive game plan because he's that good based on his health. But if I had to pick a side and where I would like to see more of Travis Hunter, give me the NFL matchup between Travis Hunter and McMillan.
I'm with you. So, full disclosure, I did not copy Mackenzie on this one, but I am going with the same play for a lot of the same exact reasons. Arizona was awful last week. Noah Fafita had 3 interceptions. They got blown out by BYU. It was a little bit of a laugher type game. I think their defense could provide some problems. The one thing that Colorado has struggled with is protecting Shedeur Sanders, which to your point, Damien, makes it more impressive how well he's played. And this is 2 years that he's been making really good decisions, and that's not easy to do when you're getting pounded time after time. And I'm wondering about both Horn and Travis Hunter. Yes, they're playing, but are they diminished? Or is there another injury? If they get the same, dinged at the same spot, could that potentially have them out of the game? It was such an emotional late game last night. Last weekend we all stayed up late and watched that game against Kansas State. They have to match that energy, bring it up again on the road. I'm going to go with the home team as well.
I'm taking Colorado, and here's why. Arizona at 3-3, right?
Yes.
You look at their 3 wins, only 1 came against a Power 5 team, and that was Utah with Isaac Wilson starting. Clearly, he's been struggling as a freshman for the Utes, and they took advantage of that said opportunity. In today's matchup, they're playing against a quarterback that will be a first-round selection. And to your point about the concerns with Shedeur not potentially having a healthy Horn and a healthy Travis Hunter, last week was arguably his best game in a Colorado uniform because he had to put forth his best effort against a very, very stout team in Kansas State without his top 2 pass catchers, and he threw for 388 yards, completed over 80% of his passes. So even if those guys are not 100% healthy, Shedeur still has the it factor to get the job done. He is playing like the best quarterback in college football, and to your point about how unreliable his offensive line has been, it doesn't stop him.
Never.
He's tough physically and mentally, and he continues to get hit beat up, kick, and he stands up in the paint every play to give his offense the best chance to score. So I think he has success against Arizona.
And you know what else he doesn't do? Out of all the great things, he doesn't turn the ball over. He doesn't throw. He doesn't throw a ton of picks. Even though he's sacked a bunch of times, you're not seeing a bunch of strip sacks. Like, he is commanding this offense. Yeah. As if he's the only guy that's going to be out there playing, he's going to take the onus and put it on his shoulders. And to even go back on your all's conversation that you guys were having about, Travis Hunter on offense or defense, I say play him on offense. Give Shedeur, this guy that we're talking about, he is the X factor. He has the it about him. Give him his top guy back. Granted, he might not be 100%, but you're not going to get a better connection than Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. And with Noah Fifita in this Arizona offense, I'm not sold on Fifita. Granted, they've got a first-round talent in T-Mac. Yeah. Can he get him the ball? That's really my question. Can he get him the ball early, often enough? So if I'm Colorado, I'm not necessarily worried about that because of Fifita, so I'm putting Travis Hunter on offense.
All right, I love it. We'll leave it there. Here's one last look at Danny and Mackenzie's best bets for some of these midday games we'll be watching for later on today. Ken's has the over in Notre Dame's team total, while the total first half under at 24.5 points. For Colorado and at Arizona, both of these two like Wildcats. More to come on college football pregame. We've got way more games to get to, including can Kansas State's run game between Avery Johnson and DJ Giddens continue to roll this week? And is it time to take this SMU team seriously? That answer next. We're back here on College Football Pregame on CBS Sports HQ. I'm Jordan Giorgio alongside Damien Harris, Danny Kanell, and Bryant McFadden with you as we continue to break down the biggest games ahead of today's Week 8 slate, working through some of the late games now, which includes a Big 12 battle between number 17 Kansas State and West Virginia. Here's a look at the injuries you should know ahead of this one. Kansas State suffered some major injuries in the secondary just a week ago, BMAC versus Colorado, but they should be healthy for tonight against West Virginia. Good news there.
Yeah, no question. When you talk about the experience, that's a big-time plus. But the pass defense has been the Achilles heel for their defense thus far. When you talk about their numbers, they're allowing around 268 yards through the air on the season. That's not pretty good. That's not good football. So hopefully they can be stout enough to have some success against Garrett Green and the West Virginia's passing offense, because one thing about Garrett, he loves to run the football, but if he finds any loopholes in the secondary, he's going to try to exploit them.
And you see there the Mountaineers have ruled out receiver Jaden Bray, while Aubrey Burks and TJ Jackson are both questionable. Let's go ahead and get a game pick in this one as we turn things over to our own Mackenzie Brooks. Mackenzie, K-State still on that outside looking in as a potential Big 12 championship berth. They'll need some help in the coming weeks, and it starts tonight with a win against West Virginia. Does the model have confidence in them getting it done?
The model is just back like a bad habit on Kansas State. We love this team no matter what they do. And you're right, they are fighting for their Big 12 playoff or conference championship hopes. Their only way into this playoff right now is to get to the Big 12 conference championship and take that title. So a lot on the line, trying to control their own destiny. We're actually getting a pretty price on the money line here for Kansas State. So I think that's the safer play here. Look, the one thing West Virginia does well, BMAC was mentioning it, stay on the ground and their run game. However, that's not going to work necessarily against this Kansas State run D. Even taking the numbers outside of it, Neil Brown like 3-16 against top 25 teams. So certainly not an easy spot for him to be in, a lot of high pressure. So I just think we're overreacting a little bit to Avery Johnson and the injuries and how banged up he was, but I think he can stay in the pocket and still get this win done.
I like Kansas State today, and I think it's because of the three-headed monster in, Avery Johnson, DJ Giddens, and Jace Brown. And when you look at what they've done, they've taken care of the football. They've been solid all year. They play really fundamentally sound football. And I'm going to go back to DJ Giddens for a second, because this is one of the most underrated players in all of college football. We talk a lot about Ashton Genty. We've talked about Ollie Gordon, Amarian Hampton at North Carolina. This guy has been unbelievable. Turn on his tape against Colorado. Look at what he did to Shiloh Sanders. Look at how he runs the ball efficiently, and that takes some of the pressure off of Avery Johnson, because we know he's characteristically, he'll make a bad decision here and there, but when you've got a back like DJ Giddens that you can just hand the ball off to, that's a reliable 3, 4, 5, sometimes 10, 15 yards. That way that takes some of the pressure off of him and his decision making. It allows him to play more within the system, not be looking for the big play. So with that combined, I like Kansas State today.
That duo between Johnson and Giddens right now, they are the only pair of teammates right now in the nation to accumulate 18 rushes for 10 or more yards. Giddens currently 4th in the nation for rushing yards. Why do you feel like he's a guy right now getting overlooked?
Because he's not flashy. He doesn't do it the entertaining like way, but he's super productive. And I just love his lean. One thing that Bill Cowher told us my rookie year, he said good running backs always fall forward. Damien, I believe you fell forward a lot.
A lot.
When you do that, you're getting positive yards. You're never putting your team in a position to lose yards. So he falls forward, to your point about what he did last week, but he just does it the ugly way compared to some of these other high-power, elite-like running backs. But his way is super effective.
Danny, who's your pick in this one?
You guys know when everybody zigs, I like to zag. This seems too easy for me. Like Kansas State, yes, I think they should win, but this is such a crucial game for West Virginia in Morgantown. This place is going to be rocking. I don't think the Big 12 has that much separation from top to bottom, which Neil Brown actually pointed out, ironically, just a few weeks ago, saying any team can beat any team. I'm going to go with the home team here. I'm going to get the points. I wouldn't be surprised if they pull out the outright upset. Avery Johnson's worst game came against BYU. Where was it? On the road. They struggled against Tulane on the road. It's different. It's hard to travel in college football. I think Kansas State's really good. I think maybe they eke it out, but I think it's going to be closer than a lot of people think.
For me, I'm taking Kansas State, and here's why. I trust Kansas State's rushing attack more so than West Virginia's rushing attack against Kansas State's defense. That's their strong suit defensively for Kansas State. They do a great job in neutralizing and slowing down opposing offenses' rushing attack, and I think West Virginia will have issues in doing so. And the last thing I'll say in terms of this game and why I really like Kansas State, the trend is your friend. West Virginia, they lost their last 8 matchups against ranked opponents. The last time I checked, the Wildcats, they're currently ranked, and if that's the case, West Virginia is probably going to squander this one away as well.
All right, I'm thinking this one might be a little bit closer than we think too, Danny. All right, moving on to number 21 SMU versus Stanford. SMU faces its first real West Coast trip of the season. Here's a peek at the injuries. We're monitoring some for Stanford right now. Quarterback Elijah Brown is progressing faster than expected. Coach Troy Taylor said earlier this week, but his status remains TBD, you guys. That's for Stanford. And while running back Cedric Irvin is out and Micah Ford is day-to-day right now, let's get a game pick in this one. And it is important to bring this game up, Kens, because SMU is very much alive here. But does the model have them surviving this weekend and taking advantage of the Stanford defense?
Absolutely. And in that race to the ACC Conference Championship with Clemson, with Miami, you want to put up your style points because this really could come down to a very, very close race. So that's why I like the SMU team total here to go over. We have them projected for 45 points, which isn't crazy against the Stanford defense. Every week I will find ways to fade the Stanford defense, whichever way you put it. Home, away, any circumstance, they are allowing almost 35 points per game. And now you're going up against an SMU team with their new quarterback averaging 47 points per game. We still are pricing them like this is the team that started the season. It is not. That quarterback change has done so much for this team. And again, on this race to the ACC, I think they have a lot of motivation to play some hard football.
I love SMU in this game. And I will say, I counted them out after week 3. I didn't know how they were looking, but that quarterback change, throwing in Kevin Jennings at quarterback, has made all the difference. They're prolific, they're scoring a lot of points, and they're living up to that expectation that we had for SMU at the beginning of the season. I think this trend continues to roll. They're undefeated in ACC play. They're trying to figure out how they're going to get in this ACC championship. Well, how do you do that? You go 1-0 this week, so I like SMU.
I like SMU too. I like them to win by 2 touchdowns. Not more.
Juicy.
This is a trap game if there ever was one. SMU, for the first time in a long time, they're starting to rise up the top 25 rankings. We're in here talking about them potentially being in the ACC championship game. Everybody is telling them how good they're playing, and they are. I've called games in Palo Alto, out in Stanford. It is sleepy. They do not hard to get anybody there. It's one of those bring your own energy type of games for SMU. I think that could be challenging for them. Stanford coming back home, I give them a ton of credit. They've been fighting hard. They've had injury issues. They haven't been playing that well. This is one of those ones where they've got a ranked team coming in. I think they cover, but I think SMU wins.
Yeah, I'm taking SMU as well. They are the more talented team. Quarterback Kevin Jennings has been outstanding. No turnovers, 5 touchdowns. Brashard Smith is running the football effectively as well. They understand how important this game is. To your point about how sleepy it could be out there in Stanford, just don't listen to the mall music. Bring your own music when you get to Stanford, because
just like we do.
Yeah, if you listen to that music, you will be sleeping at the wheel. And I think that's part of the plan when you're playing Stanford in Stanford.
All right.
Why do you think we bring that?
Yeah,
We bring our own
he
music.
stays ready.
Where's the,
It's Danny
we got that
Kanell.
one in there.
one too.
You don't want to see
we
this
got this
pink
one.
one.
This is Ken's, by the way. This is Ken's. This is Ken's. That's her outfit.
You guys, Mustangs have covered the spread in 4 of their last 5 outings, so we will wait and see what happens there. Just getting started here on college football pregame on CBS Sports HQ. A huge game in the SEC today between number 1 Texas and number 5 Georgia. And Bevo, you guys, has arrived. Look at him. Longhorns have a lot to be excited about. They are 6-0 as they get ready to battle another powerhouse program in their first season in the SEC. They'll kick off at 7:30 Eastern. More from us in a moment. Well, this just in from a big game on today's noon slate. Nebraska coach Matt Rhule says he does expect cornerback Tommy Hill to play today against Indiana. That's according to ESPN. One of the Huskers' top defensive players, Hill is, and the star corner has missed the past 2 games with a foot injury. Nebraska will need him today against number 16 and undefeated Indiana in Bloomington today, B-Mac.
No question. This is a big-time plus for Nebraska. The Florida native, Tommy, has been an outstanding player at the cornerback position. He's a big play maker for their defense, and playing against Curtis Warwick in this Hoosiers offense, a guy who's been playing high-level football in the Big Ten at the quarterback position, you're going to need all the defenders in the back end that you could use to try to slow down Curtis Warwick in that offense.
Huge news for the Cornhuskers as they get set to kick off today at noon against the undefeated Indiana Hoosiers. More from us on College Football Pregame on the other side.
Welcome to Hour 2 of your college football pregame show here on CBS Sports HQ, presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Make every moment more. Look at this panel of strength and skill.
Wow.
Yeah, because Mackenzie's here. I had to add the skill part. Damien Harris, Mackenzie Brooks, Danny Kanell, two-time Super Bowl champion Bryant McFadden. Bringing in the intellect, Mackenzie Brooks is here at the desk. I'm excited about the discussion that we're going to have. We're going to talk about the Heisman race and kind of how it all kind of breaks down. These guys have some opinions about some of the things that we've seen over the course of the last week. But first, let's get to the latest on the injury front. And we start with Colorado two-way star Travis Hunter, who's expected to play today against Arizona. The Heisman contender injured his shoulder against Kansas State a week ago, but Coach Prime said earlier this week he should be good to go in Tucson. Good news, Damien.
I mean, this is going to be a huge impact for this Colorado team. I mean, Travis Hunter is a guy that can win you the game on offense or defense. He can make a game-changing play. He's a leader of this team. He's Shedeur Sanders' top target. So it'll be interesting to see, do they play him more on offense? Do they play him more on defense? Does he have a pitch count, or is he going to just play his full number of snaps? All of that is to be determined, but at the end of the day, having Travis Hunter back is nothing but positive for Colorado.
Certainly durability is becoming an issue with the snap count that he's playing. Lowest snap count of the season last week. All right, moving on. Georgia Tech will be without quarterback Haynes King against 12th-ranked Notre Dame. Our Matt Zenitz reporting that. King led the Yellow Jackets to a 5-2 start with 14 tutties and only 1 interception. Now, veteran Zach Pyron will get the start today here, Danny. This is a big loss for them.
This is a huge loss for Georgia Tech. I think the line swung at least 4 points in Notre Dame's direction. And I do think it's significant. I don't even know if it's enough because Zach Pyron's going to step in. Hasn't played much football. Doesn't have the same exact skill set that Haynes King does. He's mobile. He's a big playmaker. He's also the leader, the clear-cut leader of this team.
All right, as for Florida, running back Montrell Johnson has been ruled out against Kentucky. He'd been questionable this week after getting injured in the loss to Tennessee last Saturday. So let's have a Florida State guy comment on that.
The world we're living in currently. But this is a huge loss for Florida because he was like the engine for the offense. Now with DJ Lagway being the full-time starter because of the injury to Graham Mertz, you would love to have a reliable running game to rely on. If that happens today against Kentucky, a very, very feisty opponent, they're going to have to do so without Montrell Johnson. And this is a very, very defining moment for Billy Napier in the season because you have Kentucky, and if you don't take care of your business against Kentucky, you're going to face off against the Georgia Bulldogs next week, and we know how that series has been as of late.
His defining moment was not going for 2 against Tennessee last week, which I think cost him the game.
It is homecoming weekend in the Swamp. That game at 7:45 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. And other injuries to monitor, Missouri's Luther Burden and Nate Noel are likely to play against Auburn. Illinois leading rusher Caden Fagan is doubtful for the Michigan game on CBS. That's what Chip Patterson does, right? Nebraska corner Tommy Hill is reportedly expected to go against Indiana, and Texas should have Isaiah Bond on the field for that massive matchup against Georgia.
The race for the most prestigious trophy in all of college football is heating up as we enter Week 8. The odds-on favorite, Ashton Jeanty, finds himself in a bye week, leaving opportunity for others to make their case. Travis Hunter, currently number 3, has the chance to more than triple his Heisman chances with a win over Arizona. That is if he maintains his high volume of snaps at an elite level. Cam Ward, currently number 4, could find himself in a favorable 50% increase with a road win over Louisville. Jalen Milroe sits at number 5 and can find himself back in this conversation with a stat-padded road win over Tennessee, doubling his Heisman chances. Tied at the 6th spot, Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers, who go head-to-head this Saturday in Austin. Beck can nearly triple his Heisman chances, while Ewers could double with a stat-padded Texas win over the Dogs. The race for the Heisman Trophy is certainly on.
Well, Colorado's two-way star is in full-on Heisman sell mode. Hunter said this about the Heisman race via Out of Pocket with RG3 earlier this week. Y'all see Ashton Jeanty? It's not like we haven't seen a running back that's good. We haven't seen a player that plays both ways. Jeanty's got double the touches I got on the offensive side of the ball, and I still have defensive stats. That's crazy.
This is crazy.
Yeah, you know what? Hey, I'm so glad that we have both a former running back and a former defensive backfield player on this panel for this, and Danny. And Mackenzie. So, Damien, yes. I want to start with you here because he's essentially saying that being an elite running back, potentially having an historic season, is no big deal compared to what he's doing.
You know, when I listened to Travis Hunter's comments, I felt I was confident that, this is a guy that just wants to, bet on himself. He wants to hype himself. He wants to make his case. Obviously, his play does that, but he has a voice. He wants to speak on, what he does. I didn't like the fact that he acts like what we're seeing from Ashton Jeanty is every day. Go back and look at the last two Heisman Trophy winning running backs, Mark Ingram and Derrick Henry. Compare their stats midway through the season to Ashton Jeanty's stats right now. And yes, I know that he's not playing the same level of competition, but that does not boost this guy's stats as much as what we've seen. The level of competition, that doesn't make your stats just go through the roof like what we're seeing. This guy's got over 1,000 yards, 17 touchdowns. He's on pace to break Barry Sanders' record, which we need to start tracking that. We need to start seeing what his road is to actually breaking that record, because in my opinion, the Heisman Trophy is his. He's the best player in college football. You look at what he did against Oregon, a team that is one of the top in the country, a defense that held Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins in check. Well, he had over 150 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he almost willed them to a win. So I do love Travis Hunter voicing his opinion and obviously standing up for himself. That's what he's supposed to do. But let's not forget, people, what we're seeing from Ashton Jeanty is it's astronomical. We haven't seen a player or running back put up these type of numbers in a very, very long time. So Travis Hunter, you have a good argument. I love what you do both ways. You can talk to that. He's special on offense, on defense, but Ashton Jeanty is doing something that this is not normal. We are not seeing this every year. Even the best running backs in college football, year after year, they're not producing at this high level.
And I'll say this, I know there are a lot of people that took his comments slightly. He's not hating on Ashton Jeanty. He's just promoting himself. He highly respects Ashton Jeanty as a high-level collegiate player, but Travis Hunter is promoting himself, and I'm okay with that. And I think this is the world that I live in. I want to see more competition. Everybody wants to be friendly and say, oh, he's this. No, speak your mind and do so in a respectful way that we all can look at and say, you know what, we respect that. But to your point, Damien, when you look at these two top players, I think there should be 1 and 2 in the Heisman voting. If I had to give a vote, these would be my top 2 guys, and I would have Ashton Jeanty #1, and here's why. When he steps on the football field, you have to stop him, nobody else.
Absolutely.
Nobody has been able to do that, and to your point about what he did against Oregon, 192 yards to be exact. He averaged over 7 yards per carry. Oregon knew he was getting the football, and they could not stop him, better yet, slow him down. Every week, he is the vocal point for their offense. Travis Hunter has the luxury offensively of playing with a first-round quarterback that will be a top 5, top 10 guy, depending on how the draft falls. That's super important because he is getting him the football. And then defensively, that's where his skill sets can really show up because he doesn't have the same talent surrounding him on the defensive side. For Ashton Jeanty, I don't know if there's another draftable player on his team that will be a top 3-round guy. It's only him. And then the last thing I say about Ashton Jeanty, think about this. His splash runs so far this season, big play runs. He has a long of 77, 70, 68, 64, 75, and 54. Anytime he touches the football, you have to hold your breath if you're rooting against him because he can take it to the house at any given time. We haven't seen that in a long, long time. And to your point, the only comparable running back to what Ashton is doing right now is Barry Sanders.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Danny, we talk a lot about when it comes to Travis Hunter. We mentioned Charles Woodson in that conversation, but our research department has done a ton of work this week, and that the comparison is actually Champ Bailey. Like when you look at Travis Hunter and you look at Champ Bailey, that's actually the comparison here. So not to discount what Travis Hunter's saying, and I get what you're saying about him promoting himself, but we have seen players like Travis Hunter before in Champ Bailey.
I was a teammate of Champ. He played with me on the Denver Broncos. I love Champ. He's awesome. He was an incredibly athlete, probably the best guy I ever threw against outside of Deion Sanders. I did throw a pick 6 to him, by the way. But Champ was awesome. And he was incredible. I think Travis already has those numbers at this point of the season. So it's not like I don't think Champ was averaging over 100 snaps a game. I don't think we've seen this in 50, 60 years. I think you have to go back further to find anybody who did this. There were some Ohio State fans that we had Chris Gamble who did this for us back in their championship run, 20 years ago. This has never been done. As the old man up here, who usually is the typically get off my lawn take, like keep it buttoned up, don't say anything wrong. I don't even care if Travis Hunter said that. I would probably advise him to, hey, promote yourself, but you don't have to knock the other guy. You know,
Yes,
and I
absolutely.
And here's the thing, I like him so much. He does the right things. He works hard. He's in shape. Like, you have to be insane physically shape to be on the field that much. He stays out of trouble. Like, I would just pull him aside, but is Deion going to tell him to say,
yeah, right?
So like, that would be the only thing, and like, it just doesn't bother me that much.
I think his problem is just staying healthy. I mean, we talk about his path to winning this Heisman, and I know we don't want to go too far into the season because voting happens early, but you talk about his upside here. I mean, massive, massive upside. Now, that is just about him staying healthy and having the elite volume of snaps on both sides of the ball. He can't just start to regress from the 110% he's going at right now, especially when you have Ashton Jeanty ahead of him. So it is about maintaining what he was doing before that Kansas State game. He has got to get back to 110%. Now, if you aren't able to do that, you start to really, really fall down this board because you have an Ashton Jeanty, a non-quarterback that you're competing with as well. So that is going to be the problem for them. Beating Arizona feels like a very big part of it. It's not the whole story for somebody like him because he's such a one of one and he's not directly correlated to the success of the team as a whole. However, it certainly helps your case when you're dealing with guys like Ashton Jeanty in front of you.
And the question, too, is, I mean, can Colorado afford to not have him playing the number of snaps that he's been playing?
No,
because
right.
they need him. They need him.
I think they need him more on the defensive side than the offensive side because we saw a lot with Shador and how well he was able to orchestrate their offense against a pretty good defensive team in Kansas State without Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn. So when you talk about defensively, there lies the chance for him to really show his impact. But if I'm Travis Hunter, for him to continue to have a legit shot in winning this Heisman Award, he has to be a big-time player on either side of the football. And to your point, I've never seen a guy play every snap defensively and almost every snap offensively in this age of college football where most teams are getting over 100 snaps collectively per ball game. Think about the shape, the condition that he has to be in, not just physically but mentally. That's a mental battle.
Two playbooks.
Yeah. And you have to study tape. In today's matchup, he's playing against a wide receiver that will be a first-round player. So just think about the week of prep, getting ready for T-Mac, knowing that I'm going to be covering him at some point in time in this ball game. I have to be in my bag, not to mention offensively. So everything that he goes in his week of prep, and along with academics, because we still got to throw in academics. Just got to throw it in there. Yeah, but just imagine everything that he goes through mentally, the mental hurdles of playing both ways, almost 100% of the chances, and still going out there and balling out.
I'm so glad you brought up the mental aspect of it because I don't think that gets brought up enough about how hard it is. Like, people just assume you're out there and you practice and you go and like you have a couple routes or whatever. And typically, if you had a guy that was playing both ways, he would have a very small package of plays, maybe 10 plays and maybe 10 routes that he would have to run. Maybe even less than that. It'd be like, all right, you're going to run a go. We're going to have you on a post route, maybe have you on like a speed sweep, something like that. He has the full playbook on both sides of the ball. That takes up time, and that takes a very high football IQ type player to be able to execute at his level with everything that's on his plate. I don't think that gets brought up enough, so I'm glad you did.
Well, I want to go back to the Heisman conversation for a second. Do you guys think he benefits more from getting his pitch count back up to the number that we've seen before, or focusing primarily offense, defense, and be like, listen, go make some special plays on defense. That's going to increase your Heisman chances because you're not playing both ways. Make some spectacular plays. Or if you play him at receiver, okay, go out and catch for 130 yards, a touchdown or two. Do you think he benefits from playing one side of the ball more and being spectacular just on that side, or do you think he benefits more from getting his pitch count back up to the normal level that we've seen and just being that same type of player that we've seen so far?
I think the volume is important for him because for him to have a shot winning the Heisman, Kenzie, you have to do something we never seen done before as a defender, because the Heisman Award outside of the year Charles Woodson has when he won it, it was offensive award, mostly quarterback. So for him to even be to this point, it's because of the volume that he's given on both sides of the football, along with him being one of their best players. So I don't think he can diminish any of the reps and still have a legit shot to get to New York.
And so I know he's right in Prime's office right now telling him, I need my snaps.
Yeah,
especially because of what he just said about, promoting himself and no disrespect, but he disrespected Ashton Genty just a little bit.
Right.
But I know with that mentality, he's obviously a huge competitor, so I know he's beating down Prime's offense. Like, listen, whatever pitch count you guys have me on, whatever your plan is, I want to play all snaps, offense and defense.
We've seen two-way players before, but never, never at this level. Producer James has told me 3 times. So we're going to go to break. Josh Pate is sending us these images from Neyland Stadium in Knoxville, where number 11 Tennessee is hosting number 7 Alabama later this afternoon. We've got some cigars on the set here. Josh says that Neyland is the loudest stadium in college football, but it's pretty quiet for now. It'll start to get a little crazy later in the day. The Vols and Tide are set to kick off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Let's get you over to the ACC, where Louisville is home today against number 6 Miami. The Canes coming off their bye week. Their last 2 games have been insane. Miami beat Virginia Tech on that Hail Mary that was overturned by instant replay. Remember that? And then a week later, the Canes erased a 25-point deficit to beat Cal out on the West Coast. They are one of the early games this week, kicking off at noon Eastern in Louisville. Welcome back to College Football Pregame, hour number 2. Jeremy St. Louis, happy to have you along. Damien Harris, Danny Kanell, Bryant McFadden, Mackenzie Brooks is also here. We got 3 ranked on ranked games this week, and 2 of those are going to occur in the late afternoon window, and that's what we're going to discuss here. We're going to start with the big one, number 7, Alabama in Knoxville to face number 11, Tennessee. And let's get to look at some of the notable injuries going into this game. And Danny, obviously at the top, I mean, Damani Jackson, Kendrick Law. You see with these Alabama injuries, those guys are going to be available for this one, but nicked up a bit. Anything that stands out here for you? On the defense, I mean, the defense has the biggest issue. So anytime you're losing guys or have them, questionable and getting them back, that's a huge get for Kane Womack here, because the secondary has been just abysmal. But then you're starting to see it impact a lot of the other guys too. So getting guys back potentially on the defense, I think, could be a huge addition for the Tide. That's something you'd like to see too at this point of the season. Guys will get nicked up early. Nobody's 100% healthy at this point, but then they start to come back into the lineup, and then you start to see them benefit from that. Tide favored in this game, but it is a short line here, Kenzie. The total just over 56. The last time Bama went to Knoxville, the south goal post ended up in the Tennessee River. So what do the models say about that potentially happening again today, Kenzie?
There is a very small percent chance we do see that happen again today. We actually like the Alabama money line here pretty comfortably. We see a lot of short spreads this weekend, which allows us to play a few more money lines at not too expensive of a price, I'd say. Look, we talk about issues on both sides of this game here, but Tennessee's offense and the issues they are facing is more the concern to us. They've scored 0 points in the first half of their last 2 games, and that's at the likes of Florida. They had to go into overtime to beat Florida, and I understand that, Bama's secondary has some sketchy spots, but Florida's is pretty sketchy too. So if they're struggling there, I think they'll still be struggling against this Alabama team. They will force Nico to throw the ball, and he has seemed quite rattled in that situation. So I just trust the redshirt junior over the redshirt freshman here, and experience will come out in this game.
Okay, Ken, do I need to pass you a cigar? Hold on now. Hold on. Yeah. What did they say? Smoke them if you got them. Listen, I mean, y'all know who I'm going with today. The Tide is all I care about. This is a rivalry game. And listen, this is a different experience for Kalen DeBoer now. Yes, you played Georgia. Yes, you played Vandy. You lost to Vandy. But once you start talking about rivalry games, games that the donors, games that the people that pour the money into the program, like, this is for them. This is for the players. This is for the fans. This is for everybody. So Alabama has to win this game today. And no, it's not for their playoff chances, but this is because of what I talked about earlier. The vibes, the feeling in the locker room for Kalen DeBoer, Jalen Milroe, this offense, this team as a whole, they've got to step up. We talked about their defense. They got to play better everywhere. Jalen Milroe's got to play better. Ryan Williams got to play better. Guys in the backfield running the ball got to play better. You got to play better at linebacker, defensive line, secondary. Everybody has got to play better today for Alabama, because this is not going to be a cakewalk. You're going into Neyland Stadium. You're going to be on the road. It's one of the toughest environments in all of college football. And again, they've still got the taste in their mouth from ripping down the goalpost and taking it to the Tennessee River. So it's not going to be a game where you walk in there and just win because you got that A on your chest. No, you got to go in there and play Bama's brand of football. Offense, defense, special teams, everybody going out there. Nobody trying to be Superman. Everybody go out there and do your 111. Do your job. Depend on your guys next to you to do their job. If they do that, they take care of Tennessee today.
So, B-Mac, I've only known Damien like a month into 6 weeks, so I feel kind of bad doing this to him.
Wow,
I kind of like the Vols here, and I'll be rooting for you, although I want my pick to win too, so I'm rooting for them. So I'm worried about Bama. I think they have significant issues, especially on the defensive side of the ball, but they're not just exclusive to the defensive side of the ball. Jalen Milroe, the last 2 games, has not rushed for over 50 yards. I think it's even over 40 yards. Teams have kind of figured out how to limit the damage he's doing with his legs. And we were talking about this last week. We were watching the game that, man, they're relying too much on Milroe. They're relying too much on Ryan Williams on the outside. They need to get more collective help. In the Tennessee defense, James Pierce Jr. is probably a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. I think in that crowd noise where your offensive line can hardly hear and they're having trouble getting off on the snap, that to me has me pretty concerned for that side of the ball. Now, in the issues that we see here, because clearly Alabama's defense and Tennessee's offense are like these 2 opposing forces who are going to be colliding, and it's going to be, all right, which one gets exposed worse or which one fixes their problems? I trust Tennessee slightly more because of the defenses they faced recently have been really tough. And I think they might actually see one of the weaker defenses they've seen, which is insane to say about an Alabama coach team.
Crazy.
I think they score enough points to win the game outright. So as a betting, I'll take the 3.5 points because it's a big number, but I think Tennessee wins.
For me, I'm taking Roll Tide.
Thank you. Hold on. I got one for you. I got one for you. B-Bag. Don't worry. Don't worry. Hold on, kids. You want one too?
I earned mine. Nobody gives a piss, but nothing but the Tide.
Hey, man.
Roll Tide Willie, baby.
Blitz.
I'm taking Roll Tide for two major reasons. I trust Kalen DeBoer more so than Josh Heupel, and I trust Jalen Milroe. And you talked about the defenses that the Volunteers have faced over the last few weeks. Arkansas really opened up the Pandora's box and how you can slow down Nico and kind of confuse them. And they did it doing just utilizing a generic zone coverage, dropping 6 to 7 defenders in coverage and seeing can he find the open windows to complete his passes. And he struggled against Arkansas. And the same defensive game plan Arkansas presented, Florida did the same thing. So I know about Alabama's issues on the defensive side. But if they just drop back and do the same thing that Arkansas and Florida did against Tennessee, they're probably going to be successful.
It's a copycat business.
In words of your former coach, Nick Saban, I believe the rat poison is now out of the building.
Yes.
They're in Tuscaloosa. So I think we will see a more motivated, a team that will execute better on all cylinders to find a way to go into Knoxville and come out smiling with the win.
And with some cigars now. Don't forget about them. Come on now.
If Tennessee wins, they can't do the goalpost thing again. Like,
no,
why not?
don't storm the
tradition.
You're gonna make it a tradition.
No. Wait, give me that back. Give me the cigar back. What are you talking about?
If Tennessee does win this week, I mean, Danny, do these guys have to go on your diet for a week?
Yes, they absolutely should. That's absolutely.
What is it, the transfusion diet?
I'm doing a cleanse. I got plant-based only. You know.
Oh, that's why you had all those vegetables in the container when you walked in?
See that?
I thought you was feeding a rabbit. I'm not doing that. I didn't see
If Danny doesn't win, you have to go off the diet.
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Your health is
We
important.
promote good health. You stay on your eating diet.
The second game we want to discuss is the game that is on CBS. 24 Michigan visiting number 22 Illinois. We're 5-1 as we look at the injuries of note for both teams. Really, I mean, this actually doesn't look too bad, B-Mac, in terms of an injury list for both teams for the big matchup like this.
This is a huge matchup. No one is really talking about when you look at some of the other teams that are facing off this week. But when you talk about Big Ten implications, there's a lot at stake for either side, especially Illinois with what they've been able to do, surprising a lot of spectators with how they're playing football offensively as well. And can Michigan kind of get back on the right track, you know, offensively primarily when you talk about the inability to throw the football?
This game on the 100th anniversary of Red Grange's 6-touchdown performance against the Wolverines, and the Illini are wearing special.
Oh, God. Those are disgusting.
That might be the worst jersey.
One person said they look naked. From the waist down. I don't hate them. Why the hate?
It's like those.
They're just ugly.
It's like those really old throwback Packers jerseys with like the yellow helmet but the blue jersey and this is somehow a worse version of that.
Yeah,
somehow, some way.
And I don't want to be. No offense to Red Grange, like he was a phenomenal player, but like if you really wanted to pay a tribute to him, then go wear the original uniform. Like wear the leather helmets, wear the sweater.
Can they find?
Just don't put us through this.
I don't know if they can find leather helmets.
I don't
know if they can.
I don't know if they're.
I guess I'm the contrarian. I think they look pretty sick. I mean,
Tom Fornelli loves them. Of course he does.
Yeah. Jordan, you're offset. You like him? Yeah.
They would not survive the fit check.
Jordan rates the fits.
They would not survive the fit check that we do pre-show.
No.
Okay, Kenzie, another 3.5-point road favorite here. Do you like the fit, and what are the models saying?
I'm not a huge fan of the fit, but that's really, I leave that to Damien and Jordan, our fashionistas over here, for them to decide. What I do know is we give this Michigan team such a hard time for being one-dimensional. If your one dimension is really good, that's okay. You can still win football games, so we have them winning this game. If you can take advantage of the other side of the ball, allowing 240 yards on the ground the last 2 weeks, Illinois has been. This defensive line is beat up. They needed that bye week. They're still tired. Michigan's one of those teams that I think really did benefit from this, figuring out your quarterback situation. You have Thunder and Lightning, and a little more Lightning with Orgy as well. So this running back room can certainly take advantage of this banged up Illinois D here today.
I'm going against Kens. I like Illinois, and I think because of Luke Altmaier and what he's bringing to this offense. I mean, he's tied for the lead in passing touchdowns in the Big Ten with only 1 interception. I mean, this Illinois team is clicking on all cylinders. I know their defensive line is a little bit beat up, but they make up for that in the secondary. They're excellent at taking the ball away. They're excellent at creating turnovers, and they're also excellent at blitzing. Not only are they sending a ton of blitzes, but they're getting home as well. I think that can provide some problems in the run game for Michigan as far as blocking scheme and who's going to go to which guy, and if you've got a blitzer coming off the edge. I think it's really going to confuse this Michigan offense, and let's not forget, they're onto their 3rd string quarterback now. So I'm not really liking what I'm seeing from Michigan so far. I'm going Illinois.
I'm with you, Damien. We're going to do a breakdown at the 3 o'clock show later this afternoon on Luke Altmaier. So I did a little breakdown of him. He is playing unbelievable football. He's actually more mobile than you give him credit for. He's making plays for him. The one thing that concerns me about Illinois, the defense giving up 49 points to Purdue, but I give him a pass because they switched quarterbacks. It was Ryan Brown. He rushed for 100 yards. They were running things they hadn't shown all year. Illinois' defense is better than that performance, and I don't think they have to be great to shut down Jack Tuttle, who's the 3rd quarterback, and they are struggling mightily. And not to mention Michigan's defense, which was great last year. I give them credit because they're not getting much support on offense. They're not as dominant and as scary as they were last year. So I like Illinois to win the game, too.
I'm right there with you guys. I'm taking the team with the better quarterback, Luke Altmaier, in the last 3 games, 779 yards through the air. He's playing high level. Not to mention his favorite target, Pat Bryant. Anytime you have Bryant in your name, you're a heck of a guy. I'm taking his ability, especially against Will Johnson. That's going to be a high-level matchup to watch, 2 high-level NFL-type prospects. But I'm taking Illinois being able to score points. And defensively, I have concerns because they're going to face a very, very high-level rushing attack. That's okay, but you have to play your best defense in the red zone. So if you can limit scoring opportunities when they get into the red zone, Michigan's offense, there lies the opportunity to win this ball game. So in between the 20s, we know there's going to be some loopholes, but you have to play what I call elbow defense. You bend, but you don't break. They cannot afford to break in the red zone. They'll come out on top if they can do that.
All right, so Kenzie, the data nerd, the only one going with the elbow.
I was trying to figure out where that was going. That was a good one.
The elbow doesn't bend.
All right, good stuff. Good stuff, gentlemen. Good stuff. Let's recap the picks here. Of course, we put Danny and Mackenzie against each other. Danny, are you back in this race yet, or is this?
Oh, I'm closing the gap.
What's the record? What's the number?
It's not pretty.
Don't worry. It'll be up soon. You'll be able to see it, B-Mac. You'll be able to see it.
B-Mac gets so bad we stopped putting the record up.
Oh, no, keep fighting. Keep fighting, Danny.
Final hour.
Kenzie likes money lines for both of these games, Bama and Michigan. Danny's going the other way. Tennessee and Illinois straight up wins. More SEC action in Columbia, Missouri today. Number 19, Missouri hosting Auburn. These images come to us from Gabe Dieremund of PowerMizzou.com. Auburn has won all 3 matchups between these schools since Missouri joined the league in 2012. It'll be an early start in Death Valley with Clemson hosting Virginia. This game will be a homecoming for Virginia head coach Tony Elliott, who is a Clemson alum. Elliott won 2 national titles at Clemson as the offensive coordinator for Dabo Swinney. The Tigers and Cavaliers will kick off in less than 90 minutes at noon Eastern time. Now, one note here, wideout Bryant Wesco is out with an ankle injury. All right, time now for our parlay pick presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Make every moment more. Mackenzie certainly does that, right? With our parlay pick. How are you making us some money here today? Give us the rundown.
We're going with a nice, simple 3-leg around plus 500-er. If you're like our good friend Jordan, you'll add about 9 more legs to that.
That's
but for
fair.
those who want to
That's
keep
fair.
it reasonable, we got 3 legs here today, starting with Notre Dame team total to go over 31.5 here. They have gone over this number in 3 of their last 4 games, going up against a defense allowing over 31.5 in 3 of their last 4 games. Still fighting for style points, this team is, after their loss to Northern Illinois. Then we're going to take another team total here with USC over 31.5. I understand their playoff hopes are quite diminished, but you still have Miller Moss, who waited 3 years to be in the starting quarterback position, right? Still looking for draft stock here. Lincoln Riley might be left in Maryland if they do not win this game, so I don't think this team's taking any chances here. Then we go to the Kansas State money line. Look, Avery Johnson, I feel confident, even if he's not as mobile as he typically is, he can still win this game in the pocket. This Kansas State run D will take away the one great thing West Virginia is good at, which is running the ball. So I do feel confident in that money line. Pays out to around plus 500 for the team at home.
It's nice 5-1. As Kenzie mentioned, Jordan will probably add about 7 legs to that. She doesn't do anything less than plus 10,000. That's what she told us during the break. Scan that promo code right now as new FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers get a profit boost every college football Saturday. Scan that QR code to start tackling some bets on America's #1 sportsbook. All right, big one in the Big Ten today. Unbeaten Indiana is at home today against 5-1 Nebraska. Oh, wait a minute. We're going Georgia, Texas instead. That's a big game. We'll talk about that next. College football pregame continuing here on CBS Sports HQ, presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Make every moment more. This is not an injury note, but Uga is not traveling for the game today because the last time Uga was there, people tried to take him down. To take him out.
Is that really why they're not taking him?
They said travel logistics.
Yeah, I think he was
He's
sick.
a puppy.
Travel issues. Yeah, he's a puppy.
Goodness.
He's a puppy.
Boy, that might change my pick.
You don't want to.
I don't know.
Welcome back inside CBS Sports HQ studios here as we have quite the primetime slate tonight. All eyes, of course, going to be on that SEC showdown between number 5 Georgia and the #1 team in the nation, the Texas Longhorns. So not really a lot of injuries that are of note that we want to discuss here, but we do want to get over to Mackenzie here because we want to get a game pick. And you pointed this out during the break. The last time that Kenzie put on some Georgia gear.
Listen, I'm just calling
We're just switching it up. We're going to retro today,
last time she
okay?
promoted some Georgia apparel.
Horns down, baby. Horns down today.
What do you got?
All right, well, so we're going to ignore the model over here. Just close your eyes over there. Now, I'm going to just save myself here and take an under, which that could be a Georgia win, that could be a Texas win. I'm not here to tell you who wins, but I do think there will not be a lot of points. I think we're overreacting to the Bama-Georgia shootout, the Oregon-Ohio State, these great top teams playing each other, and that always resulting in overs. This is a great Texas defense, and I understand they haven't played a team like Georgia yet, but they're still holding FBS schools to under a touchdown here, so there is something to be said for that. As far as the Georgia defense as well, this is just a vibes check on Kirby Smart here, okay? He knows how to get these boys ready for this type of game. I have a hard time believing he will not be ripping into them and this defense going into this game. So I think it will be slower than a lot of these other top games we've been seeing.
Horns up, baby. I'm going horns up, baby. You know what? I got 2 cigars. So I got one for a Bama win, and I got another one for a Georgia loss. Let me tell you why. You guys like that, huh?
Okay.
So listen, this is the deal. Texas is going to win this game, and here's why. Georgia's secondary has not played well all year. I go back to the Mississippi State game. They confused Georgia's secondary with a bunch of eye candy, with a lot of motions, with a lot of different route patterns and combinations. And from the standpoint of a Kirby Smart defense, that's not what we're used to seeing. Having guys running down the sideline, guys running down the middle of the field, wide open, scoring touchdowns, giving up big chunk yardage down the field. So you're going up against Texas, a team that's going to use a ton of motion, a ton of different formations, and they've got a two great quarterbacks that can either, obviously go in and play at a high level. So for me, this is about Georgia's secondary fixing their eye discipline, fixing their reading their keys, and just being more dialed into the game plan. And I don't see that standing up today against Texas and these receivers.
So I think this game's going to be awesome. I think it could be very similar to what we saw last weekend with Oregon, Ohio State. 2 heavyweights going toe-to-toe, like outstanding execution. I hope it's a really clean game. That'd be a ton of fun. I think there's value on Georgia. And they've kind of been cast aside because they lost to Alabama. They struggled against Mississippi State last week. Kirby Smart shoving dudes on the sideline.
Yeah, that was
it's all out
crazy.
panic. But I still think there's value on them. I don't have the guts to take them, but I think if you wanted to, I think there's value on them getting 4.5 points. My play in the game is first half. I think Texas wins. I'm going to play the first half Texas -3. Georgia has been sluggish out of the gate almost every single game this season. They have struggled to score points in the first half specifically. Think about Bama. Remember how awful Carson Beck was there? It's almost like he takes a little bit of time to get the motor going, to find a rhythm, to get into the flow of the game. And on the flip side, Sark is one of the best offensive minds we've seen, scheming up plays, knowing opponents' weaknesses. Yep. And what do we hear about Kirby Smart when he faced Kalen DeBoer? He's like, man, I saw some formations I didn't see. They went right down the field. So I like Texas to win, but I'm also going to take them first half -3.
I love Texas as well. The home field advantage is going to be huge in this matchup. Being in Austin, the atmosphere is going to be electric. That's one thing. But then think about this. Georgia, they're playing in this ball game, and they won't have the best defense on the football field. Think about that. When you look at all the pro-level prospects that have been a part of their defense, in tonight's matchup, they won't have the best defense. Texas defense has been outstanding, only surrendering 3 touchdowns throughout their entire schedule thus far. Yes, they played against some teams that were not to their level talent-wise, but even the teams that faced off against that had some decent talent, Mississippi State, Michigan, and last week against OU, they haven't allowed a lot of touchdowns. I think that will play a huge factor when it comes to the confidence going into this ball game. And then for UGA's offense, they are lacking playmakers when it comes to the passing attack. Man, they're missing Ladd McConkey, they're missing Brock Bowers, and they have yet to find guys that can kind of give that same production that those two guys gave them a year ago, and that has really hurt Carson Beck's chances to be high level when it comes to throwing the football. I think all of those issues will surface once again. Defensively, Damien, you talked about the issues against Mississippi State. We're going to see a better Quinn Ewers in today's matchup than what we saw against OU, knowing that he got the rust out of his game last week. So I'm taking Texas. I'm taking Steve Sarkisian. I'm taking their best defense. I'm riding with the Longhorns.
All right, Kenzie out on an island again, although she did take the under.
Yeah.
She did take the under.
Right, Unders are for...
Whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Here's the injury situation for number 5 Georgia at number 1 Texas.
Tate Ratledge
want to get this out to you. Branson Robinson is out for the Bulldogs, and left tackle Tate Ratledge is expected to dress but only play in an emergency situation. That's per our Matt Zenitz. Smile Mondon is also out for Georgia. Texas should have Isaiah Bond, who injured his ankle last week, but safety Derek Williams Jr. is out for the season. All right, some injury updates for LSU's receiving corps. CJ Daniels is questionable with that injury. He suffered late last month, but Chris Hilton is out. They, of course, taken on Arkansas, and quarterback Taylon Green is off the injury report after injuring his knee 2 weeks ago, but running back Rodney Hill and kicker Kyle Ramsey are out for this game. All right, so let's get to some picks here. Mackenzie, this is obviously another big game. What do you have for us here?
Yeah, LSU here is actually playing for something, so I think that motivation will certainly come in. They have won the last 4 games in Arkansas. I know we talk about that being such a hard stadium to play in. LSU kind of has that chip on their shoulder here. I think this will be a turnover battle that LSU wins. Arkansas had an out-of-character, perfect game 2 weeks ago against Tennessee. I think they lose that momentum on the bye week here. I think they get back to their turnover-prone ways, and LSU takes advantage of that today.
LS who? I'm taking Arkansas today. I believe in Taylon Green and this Arkansas team. Early in the season, they were losing games that they were supposed to win. Against Tennessee, I saw they figured it out. Now they have a bye week to prepare for this LSU team, and this is a potential letdown spot for LSU. You just won a huge game in Death Valley at night versus Ole Miss. You derailed the lane train. Now Brian Kelly is America's greatest coach. LSU, Garrett Nussmeier is the top quarterback in the country. This is a huge, huge letdown opportunity. This Arkansas team is good. They're feisty. They've played in a lot of tough games. Like I said, they lost them in the earlier part of the year, but now they started to figure out how to win, starting with a win against Tennessee. So I like Arkansas today in an upset, outright.
I was kind of worried about this game, which direction I was going to go, because I leaned towards Arkansas, and I was worried about Taylon Green. When I saw he's expected to play, I'm with you. I think Arkansas wins the game outright. And if they do, Sam Pittman came in. He was the hottest seat, more so than Billy Napier. People expected him to be fired during the season at Arkansas. He's already had the signature win against Tennessee. That was a massive win for them. If he wins this game, they don't take him off the hot seat. They should give him an extension for the job he's done, turning this program around, bringing in Bobby Petrino. Taylon Green has flourished in the system. I think they get it done. They're coming off a bye week. They're hungry. They're playing with a lot of confidence. I think they beat LSU outright.
Go Tigers. If this game was happening week 1 or week 2, I like Arkansas's chances because it's something about Brian Kelly where he kind of gets off to slow starts. But in the middle of the season, to Kenzie's point, they have a lot they're playing for. I think you're going to get Brian Kelly's best coaching effort in tonight's matchup, along with Garrett Nussmeier. I mean, he's playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, hands down, and his wide receivers are helping him. And I do have concerns or reservations about LSU in the back end. But when you look at Taylon Green, when he is the catalyst for their offense, Arkansas-wise, they're not really trying to throw the football. They're running the football. That actually plays into what LSU wants you to do because they've been vulnerable against quarterbacks that can throw it around the yard. They're not going to see an offense like they saw last week with the Jackson Dart. I think that helps LSU chances, and they have no room for error. They understand what's at stake. Give me LSU and Brian Kelly.
LSU 7-1 in the last 8 meetings. It's the 70th battle for the boot. LSU won 34-31 last year. Good stuff, gentlemen. As always, let's take a look at a picks recap here. Kenzie and Danny head-to-head. Kenzie likes the under. Georgia, Texas staying safe. Unders for losers, I believe, is what Kenzie has to say.
Thank you for finishing that off for me, Jeremy. Thank you.
Danny has a first half Texas -3 there. In terms of LSU, Arkansas, Kenzie's going LSU. Danny going Arkansas. The line sitting at 2.5. Big one in the Big Ten today. Unbeaten Indiana is at home against 5-1 Nebraska. I feel like I've read this before. The Huskers are expected to get cornerback Tommy Hill back in the lineup. They're going to need him. Indiana is one of two teams that has yet to trail at any point this season. Army is the other one. Hoosiers and Huskers will kick off at noon Eastern time. Speaking of Army, Navy, 2 undefeated service academies. Danny, we're headed for a little bit of anarchy here with these two teams.
Yes, it's pretty remarkable the seasons they've had. First time in 70 years we've seen this type of success from both of these teams. Both of their quarterbacks, Bryson Daly for Army has accounted for 20 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Blake Horvath for Navy, 17 touchdowns, 1 interception. And there is becoming a scenario that they could actually play for the American Championship, which is fantastic. But then they would play the very next weekend in the Army-Navy traditional rivalry game right here on CBS. There are some really interesting dynamics that could unfold with Army and Navy.
The two teams have never met twice in a single season. That could happen. If Navy wins today, they'll both be 6-0 for the first time in 35,778 days. Wow. Just so you know. November 6, 1926.
Wow.
The last time that happened.
Wow. Almost 100 years.
That's some good math.
All right, well, Neyland Stadium is going to be rocking. But before we get to that, a quick update on Missouri running back Nate Noel, who missed last week's game with an ankle injury. He's off the injury report and good to go. 471 yards rushing and a pair of scores heading into today's game at Auburn. And of course, a lot of eyes going to be on Neyland Stadium. Josh Pate said it's the loudest stadium in all of college football. And when we come back, they're getting set, of course, to host Georgia today. Josh Pate is going to join us on the other side as your college football pregame show continues.
Back here in college football pregame, where we continue to keep you up to date with the biggest injuries we're monitoring for today's games. That includes Nebraska's Tommy Hill is available to play today against Indiana. That's one of the top Huskers defensive players. The star corner has missed the past 2 games with a foot injury, and BMAC, Nebraska will need him today against number 16 and undefeated Indiana.
No question, passing-wise, Indiana, they've done a great job in taking advantage of the opportunities in the matchups in their favor. Curtis Warwick has been unbelievable. 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, getting Tommy the Thrill Hill back in the lineup. I don't know if his nickname is a thrill, but I just threw that in there.
I like it.
Gives you that type of production when he's out there. It's huge having him back in the lineup.
All right, we'll see if that sticks. I don't know. Wideout Isaiah Bond is probable for top-ranked Longhorns today, who host number 5 Georgia tonight in Austin. Bond suffered an ankle injury last week in the win over Oklahoma. He does lead the team with 369 yards receiving to go with 3 touchdowns. It's big if they get him back, Damien.
Paramount. This is Quinn Ewers' top target. He's been the most productive guy in the passing game. This is a guy that you need on your sideline in the game against a team like Georgia. I talked earlier, Georgia's secondary is the weak spot of this team to me right now. So for Texas in this offense to be productive, they've got to have all their receivers on deck, especially Isaiah Bond, to have Quinn Ewers to give him options to throw the ball to, drive the ball downfield. So this is going to be a huge get for Quinn Ewers in Texas today.
And lastly, Danny, Georgia Tech will be without quarterback Haynes King against 12th-ranked Notre Dame. That's per our own Matt Zenitz. King led the Yellow Jackets to a 5-2 start with 14 touchdowns, just 1 interception. So we'll get to see veteran Zach Pyron today. What should we expect from him?
Not the same. He's just not as mobile, and he's not as much of a playmaker as Haynes King, and he's not really the lifeblood of this team. This is a clear-cut leader in Haynes King. Zach Pyron will play the role of game manager. I'm sure they'll have a little bit more of a limited offense with him under center. So he's got his work cut out for him. But our guy, Jordan, Chris Wenke, will have him ready to go. He's the quarterback coach there in Atlanta for the Yellow Jackets. So I think they'll have a pretty good game plan for him.
All right, and lastly, in some other injury news, Colorado two-way star Travis Hunter is set to play today, you guys, versus Arizona. It'll be interesting to see if he is limited when it comes to snaps, for both sides of the ball. Really, Luther Burden and Nate Noel, you see there, are both available for Mizzou. Illinois' leading rusher, Caden Fegan, is doubtful versus Michigan. That game on CBS later on today. And for Notre Dame, kicker Mitch Jeter is expected to be a game-time decision. That comes for our own Matt Zenitz. Now, week 8 of the season has a lot to live up to because week 7 delivered us such chaos in college football, driving some fan bases absolutely crazy. We saw Death Valley. They got wild in LSU's overtime win to Ole Miss as we take a look at our own Josh Pate's power rankings for the loudest stadiums in college football. Death Valley ranks second to Neyland Stadium as the loudest college football atmosphere. Josh has Outson in Oregon at 3. I'd be curious to see what our former players on set have to say about that. But let's go ahead and welcome Josh Pate to the show, who is live for us out in Neyland Stadium, what he thinks is the loudest college football environment. Josh Pate's whole new Saturday tour is powered by Quick Trip. Josh, I'll let you have the first word here. Walk us through your thought process in making these rankings.
All right, so that's based on what I've experienced and when I've been in the building. Like the last time we were here 2 years ago, they played Alabama. I mean, Alabama is the biggest rival Tennessee has. They beat them for the first time, I mean, since a lot of us were legally able to drive. And so it was obviously a huge deal. So I've never heard a venue like that. Outson, just last week, it's not just recency bias, although the internet would tell you otherwise. Place was on fire, and people would disagree with me on Outson, and then you dig deep and you find out, oh, you've never been there. Okay, well, opinion kind of invalidated until you've been there. Whiteout at Penn State, absolutely up there. What else do we have? We had Happy Valley, like I just said. Also,
Brian Denny is at 5.
And also, so Bama got a little reputation for a while because they committed the cardinal sin of winning too much, where folks got a little complacent. We were at that Georgia game a little while ago, and I don't know, maybe it's a new coaching staff, maybe it's like a re-energized fan base, maybe it was being an underdog to Georgia. The place sounded like I hadn't heard it since that LSU game in 2019, and before that, I don't know when's the last time I heard it like that. So Bama shot right back up the power rankings. This is, as always, a fluid situation, though.
You know, you got Damien rolling his eyes over here when you brought up 2 years ago.
But no, he makes a good point though, because and I love my Bama fans. I love them to death. I love Bryant-Denny Stadium, but it's only loud when they think you're gonna lose, and that didn't happen. That don't happen too often. So, but Pate makes a really good point because it's all subjective and it's all based on what are the circumstances around the game. I can tell you a #1 versus #3 LSU versus Bama in Death Valley at night. You will not find a louder atmosphere in sports. I haven't been to any of the soccer matches over in England or across seas, but I can tell you this: you will not find a louder crowd. And then Tennessee, when they had us on the ropes a couple times, Neyland is up there. But I'll tell you somewhere that's super surprised. You guys would never guess this. Mississippi State has one of the loudest.
Get a headache.
But they got the cowbells. They got the cowbells, and I'm telling you, so whenever my junior year, they had us on the ropes. I think we ended up winning on a last-second touchdown by Devontae Smith. Go figure, right? But they had us on the ropes all game, and that last drive when we had the ball on offense, I mean, I'm talking, me and Jalen Hurts were closer than me and Danny are right now, and like he's talking to me like, okay, the blitz protection. I'm like, I can't hear you. Like, come closer, come closer. He's like, we're face to face. I can't get any closer. So, SEC primarily, I think, you know, based on the matchups and the games. You got your Bama, Georgia, you know, sometimes Florida, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia. I would be biased to say the SEC has the top 5. I have never been to Autzen. I've never been out there. I've never been to Happy Valley. But I would say the SEC stadium, especially when Bama comes to town, they get extra loud.
Don't got snubbed.
I don't think there's like even an argument top to bottom. The SEC has the best environments to play in college football, without question. Unfortunately, one that made my list, but this is his historical perspective, and Damien might be too young to appreciate this. There's actually an environment that used to be the best that now might be the worst. It's the Miami Hurricanes.
Yeah,
the old Orange Bowl was absolutely, it was electric. And we talk about LSU at night, Baton Rouge at night, the old Orange Bowl at night. The stands would literally bounce up and down.
How tough was it as a player?
It was impossible. Yeah. I mean, I faced Warren Sapp, Ray Lewis. They were on the same defense at night in Miami. I threw 3 picks.
I was going to say,
I was like, give me the stat line. Give me the stat line.
So I'm going to blame the crowd and say it was all the crowd. Okay. It really is sad is that now they play, you know, at an NFL stadium, and they are trying to address it. There's no real solution. Now it's one of the worst atmospheres.
No question.
No, it's just, it's I hate saying that, but it's just the reality.
For me personally, my experience, I would throw in the old Orange Bowl as well, because it's just the structure of the stadium. Because you have some stadiums that are larger when it comes to capacity, but the noise does not stay in the stadium. Miami only held, well, I think capacity around 70,000, the old Orange Bowl, but the noise stayed in the stadium. And outside of the Orange Bowl, I would say Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, Florida. Some of our battles, Florida State, Florida, was unbelievable. To your point, Damien, you look to your left, they can't hear you. You're yelling. And it felt like the stadium was moving. And when they did that thing in the swamp where it's like, dun, dun,
We've heard enough. We've heard enough.
It's like the entire stadium.
Y'all are like reliving some of y'all's worst memories right now.
Is waving.
I don't want to go down that road.
In Death Valley, Clemson.
Yes, of course.
Clemson, some of our epic battles.
Did you see some of the clips from last weekend? That was wild. From Death Valley, did you see some of the clips? They were playing Lil Boosie and
not that Death Valley.
Oh,
Clemson fans say the original.
I'm like, I thought, that, you know what, that has to go up there too, the real Death Valley. Okay, I was gonna say that was, I was wishing that I was there.
I want to throw one more out there. Just because, just because BMAC made a great point about, you know, capacity versus the way the stadium is built. So one thing that I think that has capacity plus the way it's built keeps the noise in, Texas A&M. Aggie Land, Kyle Field, because it's built straight up. So you're fitting 105, 110,000 people in there, but the building goes straight up. So it feels like every single fan is just on top of you. So the fans in the nosebleeds that are like, you feel like you can hear it, you feel like you can feel it, because there's a ton of people. The way the structure is formed, it keeps all that noise in there. So
plus that cult that comes to worship on Saturdays, they are very real.
The C word.
They are very real.
No, I'm not gonna lie. And kind of like you said with the at Ben Hill Griffin, where they do the dun. Well, at Aggieland, they do this thing at the start of the fourth quarter where they start to sway. They lock arms and they sway. And I swear to God, it looks like the entire. Yeah, I like it, Pate. It looks like the entire stadium is just shifting side to side, and it looks like it's going to collapse.
Pate, you were an honorary Yell leader a couple weeks ago, right?
No way.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Really?
Hey, listen. when people ask you to take a picture, you take a picture. You know that as well as I do. I had the black T-shirt on, so there was no confusing me for them. But I will tell you guys now, you know they get Texas in there at the end of the year. And as of now, Texas about an 8 to an 8.5 point favorite. If that line holds, like if A&M stays competitive, that rivalry week, we don't know what the Iron Bowl is going to look like this year. FSU, Florida, nothing. USC maybe. Ohio State's favored by like 3 touchdowns against Michigan. That Texas A&M game, that one could get the national spotlight treatment. That place on that Saturday could like reintroduce itself nationally.
Josh, has there been a overrated stadium that you've gone to or visited that you had some high hopes? They talk up the fan base, the noise, the atmosphere, and it fell so short?
I think it's not fair to these folks. It was the Kansas State game a couple of years ago, but they got out to like a 21, 28-point lead. They won 49-0. I think to this point, it's the biggest blowout I've ever seen on the road in the tour that we go on. And so they were playing Oklahoma State. I had heard that Kansas State's one of these sneaky places out in the middle of nowhere, which I like. I love those kind of places. I didn't get to really hear it. I didn't get to experience it. So I left disappointed that day, but it was them winning so thoroughly that disappointed me. Outside of that, when we're on the road, we're going to these places at the Circle game that they've looked forward to all year. So very rarely, if ever, do I remember a scene disappointing. And also, like Michigan got the reputation for all the sound escaping, and it's a little more sweater vest, trust fund kind of crowd. And yet when we go up there, it's been the Ohio State game a couple of years in a row. So it's been even pretty loud and rabid up there.
Are you going out Danny Kanell?
I'm even wearing Michigan colors. I can fit right in.
Wasn't it Cardell who said it was overrated to play at Ann Arbor?
I was there for the Texas game.
Yeah.
I thought it's loud.
Right.
And I feel bad for him because I do think there is something about the acoustics. It also was during the day.
True.
Like at night, it makes a difference. I don't think it's one of the top 10.
I don't either.
And the thing is, the size. They have the largest stadium. The noise just does not stay in.
And it's not for lack of trying. Their students were awesome. They stood the whole game. They were yelling and screaming. I do think a lot of it comes in the acoustics.
Well, Pay, I want to ask, because you won't be disappointed today at Neyland Stadium. Talk about, what do you expect? How loud do you think it's going to be? How much of a factor do you think this crowd at Neyland Stadium is going to be for Jalen Milroe, Kalen DeBoer, and the Alabama Crimson Tide today?
It'll be really obnoxiously loud, like disrespectfully loud. But here's the thing. Being around here a couple of days, and you guys have watched him just like I have over the past few weeks, getting shut out offensively in the first half, that rattles you. You know, it rattles a team, so it certainly can rattle a fan base. And you show up, and you're fully willing to buy in. Like, you're fully willing to go over the cliff. You'll be the 12th man and all that. If Bama's up 14-0, you know as well as I do, I got folks sitting in section 228 here who start to say, here we go again. I mean, it may take us 4 quarters to score 14 points. If they don't get off to a fast start, they can do the same thing. Bama can do the same thing to this place that Miami did at Florida in week 1, that Texas did at Michigan in week 2. Seen a couple of examples already this year of big dog teams going on the road, grab a lead early, and it just like, it rips the throat out of a fan base. In some cases, literally, because they will not make noise for you anymore. If they get a 10-0 lead, like if they have reason to believe, no, we're going to be in this thing for 4 quarters, you won't find a louder environment in the country today.
Yeah, we're going to find out soon enough. Well, Josh, hang tight because we're making you work today. We have to dive a little bit deeper into this one at Neyland Stadium. More from us on the other side here on College Football Pregame. When we return, we're diving deeper into the big one in the SEC at Neyland, the loudest stadium in all of college football, according to Josh Pate. Josh gives us a vibe check from Knoxville next.
Chase McGrath for the win for the Volunteers. From 40. On the way, a knuckleball. He got it! And here they come.
Damien, you could open your eyes now.
Yeah. Well, you know what I was thinking about when I closed my eyes? I don't remember what year it was, but Tennessee was in the exact same position. It was blocked by Terrence Cody, so I just closed my eyes and thought about that.
Remember that? Okay.
Cody. Yeah, just reminiscing on some good times.
All right, you guys. Josh Pate is back with us here on College Football Pregame, live for us out at Neyland Stadium. You were actually at that game 2 years ago, Josh. What do you remember most about it?
It's the wildest spectacle, I think, of all these trips we've taken that I've ever seen. So the goalpost is right here. That's the one that it went through. That's the one they tore down. We were on the field, so Greg Gelby, as he's known on the streets, is right behind the camera right now. He's down there. I think Dennis Dodd was there. I was there. You're wearing an outdoor venue, okay? And yet the tradition after this game is winning team smoke cigars. So these folks got 15-year-old cigars they have not lit in since like the early Obama administration. And so they finally light them. And we have folks afterwards. I was talking to some of the medics on the field that had to get treated for smoke inhalation on the field in an outdoor venue. Wow. That's how thick the cigar smoke was. So they tear the goalpost down. And this is when it was still a new concept to dump a goalpost in the river after beating Bama. Now everyone near a tributary does it. So they took the goalpost out, and we were just watching this. You're watching like college kids surf on the top of a goalpost that you've torn down. These are not thin uprights, by the way. And so they took that thing out, and it was, you saw like 15 or 20 things that night, some of which we could talk about on cam, most of which we can't, that you think to yourself, only in college football could this happen. And it was just this, it was like taking a Sprite bottle and shaking it and shaking it and shaking it. And then you shake it some more, and finally you twist the cap on it. That was what it was like for these people, finally beating Alabama. I mean, like I said, you had the students here, Tennessee students, all of them were either not born or could not coherently remember the last time in their life that Tennessee had beaten Alabama. So you're talking about generations and generations who have come through here who never got to experience it. And so that right there only happens on Saturdays. That's what it was like here 2 years ago. Who knows what we get today?
Stop looking at me, Jordan. Every time there's like a ball
I'm just doing a little wellness check on my guy over here. I'm like, are you okay? Like, are you okay? Well, listen. Okay, where were you watching that game? And what were the boys saying? The Bama boys group chat.
The chat wasn't happy. I can tell you that the chat wasn't happy. I think I was still in New England at the time, and I was watching it before meetings or something like that. But and what I don't like about situations like this is you got guys who went to Vandy, guys that went to Georgia, guys that went to Florida. Look, yeah, go Vols! Like, where's my stick? And it's like, we beat y'all. Y'all aren't in this. It has nothing to do with you guys. I got my old fullback, Jakob Johnson, who played at Tennessee. When they lost to Vandy, he's over here talking about, like, go Vandy, go Commodore. I'm like, you went to Tennessee. What are you talking about?
Just the hate. The hate is real.
The hate is real. But you know what? It only happens when you're good.
Yeah.
It only happens when people want to see you fall. It only happens when people see you at the top for so long and they're ready to see somebody else up there. So, I mean, it's a good problem to have, I guess.
Yeah. The Knowles on set, very quiet all of a sudden. We're just like, can't relate right now.
You notice how
I know, I can't relate.
B-Mac was like, oh.
Hey, if you want to see my mentions from last night, I mean, I could scroll through a laundry. There's about 1,000 messages on there from people just trolling the crap out of me.
Hey, okay, so let's get back to the game now because we know this is huge in terms of the playoff race. And I'll get your thought here, but I do want to get these two in on this. But just how big of a game is it for Kalen DeBoer in this new era that he's starting?
It's big. I mean, listen, there were columns written on AL.com about the clothing that he's wearing. Like, this is just an insanely passionate fan base, but it also is one that has a massively high expectation, as they should. They've got some of the best facilities, best resources, best tradition, best players in the country. So there's an expectation that you should win most of your games, and you had the huge win against Georgia. What's crazy is, like, the change in the commentary around Bama from just a few weeks ago. It was, we are back. Who Nick Saban who? Like Nick who? And all of a sudden it was like, and they're like, yo, we're going to be just fine. It's going to be a smooth transition. And now it's like the rails are coming off. So I do think that there is a ton of pressure on Kalen DeBoer to kind of calm some of the critics. I'm not worried about him regardless of the result of this game, but I do think he needs it to sort of calm the fan base, to get everybody back on the same page and keep some of that mojo going that you carried over from the Nick Saban era.
Can I just float a theory here? My theory is that, I just want you guys to follow me for a second. I think sometimes not everyone who talks about this sport knows a whole lot about it. That's a theory that I'm holding right now. And I'm just workshopping it over the course of the season, so you guys can marinate on it. Let me know what you think. I mean, you're right, though, Daniel. You were absolutely right. First half against Georgia. That halftime felt like 5 years, because I think I read every opinion during halftime of what being up 30-7 on Georgia means for Kalen DeBoer. And it wasn't quite Nick who, but it was, boy, could you have passed off the baton any more seamlessly. And then they lose to Vandy. I almost let Georgia come back as well. Here's what they are. They're a good team. A good team is capable of both great and bad performances. Great teams do not have bad performances. They just dip down to a good performance. There aren't very many great teams. We sometimes don't have a single one in college football. So if people are wondering, how could you have that first half against Georgia and the Vandy game and the South Carolina game? Well, it's because they're a good team, so they're capable of everything. They're playing another good team today that's capable of boat racing NC State, hanging half 100. They're also capable of being shut out in the first half back-to-back weeks. I don't think Tennessee likes their situation at tackle a whole lot. I don't think they like the way they don't like the way, I can know for a fact, the way they match up with Alabama there. I think that they believe if they pop some explosive plays early, which are there to be had against Alabama's secondary, they can be off to the races. At the same time, do they hold up against Milroe? Milroe will get his on the ground. There's probably a scenario where he runs for over 100 today and Tennessee still wins, and they could accept it. It's just, does he get inside the 20 or does he get inside the goal line when he rips off those long runs? So that's the reason I slightly leaned Alabama, but it's such a wild card because there's been so much competitive inconsistency from both these teams.
B-Mac, what is your opinion on just how big of a game this is for Kalen DeBoer?
It's huge because of the loss to Vandy.
Yeah.
When you talk about the shoes he's trying to fill there in Alabama at the head coaching position, the fans are spoiled. They expect greatness, and I agree with Josh when you talk about being a good team. That's what Alabama is. They're a good team. The same can be said for Tennessee. But when it comes to Alabama fans, they expect greatness. They don't want to see a drop-off at any given moment when it comes to their football program based on all the great things Nick Saban was able to give them. So now there is a reason to be concerned. So when you talk about already having a loss on your schedule, and that loss happened to Vandy in college football, that's a bad loss. You have good losses, you have bad losses. They cannot afford to have another blemish on their record right now in SEC play, playing against a team like Tennessee. And there lies the concern from Alabama's fans. When you talk about losing to Vandy and then a few weeks later, you lost to Tennessee, and don't forget about the mishaps because they could have lost last week as well. You know what I mean? So they've been kind of getting across that street in a very, very cautious way. And if you keep doing it, eventually you're going to get caught.
And I want to piggyback off B-Mac because of why this game is so important. It's one thing to lose games and, in the SEC, this isn't the Alabama that we expected. But we're talking about a rivalry game right now. And I want to bring up something that Danny said. This is a quote from Nick Saban saying, this is Alabama's biggest rival. Sometimes I had trouble getting guys up to play Auburn. I never, ever had trouble getting guys up and ready to play against Tennessee. There is no way quicker to get on the hot seat as a head coach than to start losing rivalry games. I'm sorry, and I'm not. And please, and hear me out. And hear me out, people. I'm not saying that Kalen DeBoer needs to be on the hot seat. I'm not saying that he doesn't need to be the head coach of Alabama. What I'm saying is the trajectory to getting out of that spot is not only losing to Vandy, but then you start losing these rivalry games that mean so much to not just the players, not just the coaches, but the donors, the people who pour money into this university. That's why this is paramount to me. Go ahead.
Think about losing rivalries and losing to your rival and missing the playoffs.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Think about how quick that hot seat conversation is going to get if they, again, lose to Vandy, potentially lose to Tennessee, and that knocks them out of the playoff. Then we're going to have to start having the hot seat conversation with Kalen DeBoer. I'm sorry, but we're going to have to at that point. It's not fair to him, but.
Pate, I want to flip it to somebody else who I think is under a tremendous amount of pressure, and it's Nico. on the other side of the ball, and this is from a player's perspective, somebody who came out with massive expectations, probably unfair expectations, but after 3 games, after the NC State game that we mentioned, it was like, oh, this is the guy that's all that he's cracked up to be. What do you think is Josh Heupel's level of concern with Nico? What type of performance do you think we should expect out of him today?
See, I shoulder a little bit of that, you know, because I was one that was ignorant enough to think that what we saw against NC State, it was a springboard and that was him. So, you know, part of that's on people who were foolish enough to believe that. So that's me. Like, I was foolish enough to believe that. So then, speaking about him, I was talking to a lot of their staff yesterday, and they said, we don't have an ounce of concern about this dude physically. We don't have an ounce of concern about him mentally. So he's everything from the toes to the hair. There's everything that we need. It's just that his game is that of a first-year starter. And I think the difference, Danny, is when you shift into a world where folks know you get paid a ton of money, it's kind of transactional. And it's kind of, well, I mean, it used to be that we couldn't hate on you because you're a college kid, but now you get paid so we can, and you need to go out there and perform for us or next man up. And I was doing a radio hit earlier today, and someone asked, is that the case? I said, yeah. They said, should that be the case? I said, it doesn't matter if it should be the case. I hate it, for the record, but it is what it is. That's the way it is now. I also think if you look at the difference in some true freshmen or first-year quarterbacks who have been asked to start and play big roles versus this situation, he's behind a great center, but overall he's behind a pretty poor offensive line. They have had big problems at the tackle position. I don't think those have been rectified. And so you start seeing ghost a little bit. I think it's the best way that I can describe how he's playing right now, but I still have trouble just totally, you know, selling the concept of offense at Tennessee down the river, because I know, or I think I know, what he's capable of. And I also know you got the same Josh Heupel over here calling plays that had the #1 offense in the country a couple of years ago. So if you haven't given me proof of performance, that's when I got to see it from you, and I'm not going to buy in until I see it. I've seen it from them before, so I'm not totally out on it. It's just, it's not like a 1 week, all of a sudden it's fixed and here we are.
All right, we'll wait and see if you see that tonight. Josh Pate joining us here as we break down the biggest game in the SEC. There is nothing like the 3rd Saturday in October. Catch more from Josh every single Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 8 p.m. You can watch Josh Pate's college football show on YouTube. He has everything you need to know to be a part of the greatest game. Now, gentlemen, we have some breaking news in the NFL. The Steelers are expected to start Russell Wilson this weekend. That's according to NFL Network. With Wilson, he's been out because of a calf injury. Justin Fields was the starter for the first 6 games and led the Steelers team to a solid 4-2 start, but it wasn't enough for Coach Mike Tomlin. Both Wilson and Fields are expected to play on Sunday night when the Steelers host the Jets, though Wilson will see majority of the snaps. Well, we have some breaking news in the NFL as the Steelers are expected to start Russell Wilson this weekend. That's according to NFL Network. With Wilson out because of a calf injury, Justin Fields started the first 6 games of the season. He led the Steelers team to a solid 4-2 start, but it wasn't enough for coach Mike Tomlin. Both Wilson and Fields are expected to play on Sunday night when the Steelers host the Jets on Sunday Night Football, though Wilson will see majority of the snaps. Is this the right move to make, B-Mac? What do you think? I hate to put you in that position, but I have to.
Is it the right move? To be determined.
Okay.
But I'm not going to question Mike Tomlin as a head coach. I played for him. He's super intellectual. He understands the game. He understands the flow of the team. But one thing I'm concerned with, guys, is in sports, football especially, rhythm and chemistry is super important. And right now, under Justin Fields as the starting quarterback, you're 4-2. You just came off an explosion of points against the Las Vegas Raiders where you scored 30-plus points the first time that happened all year. The last time that happened was week 17 of a year ago, and he played probably his best. He gave his best effort in that performance. And now all of a sudden you're removing him from the lineup where clearly the continuity was there, and then the aspect that he brings to your offense and running the football when you're talking about having so many injuries, missing 3 starters, if I'm not mistaken, on the offensive line, where there could be some vulnerability for them in protecting the passer. Justin Fields can correct the wrongs because he can make guys miss. And then he can run in the red zone to what we've watched him do with this offense. So if you bring in Russell Wilson, you could lose this ball game. It might not even be Russell's fault. But the first thing that you're going to have to answer to is, was it the right move? Because you lost, your offense didn't look as good as they did last week, and your best guy potentially is on the sideline. Yeah. So to be determined if this was the right move, but clearly he has a plan in place, and he felt like Russell gives them the best opportunity to win ball games moving forward.
I am in shock by this move because of everything that you said. Like, usually you don't mess with the winning formula, right? I mean, you've been winning with Fields, and what's the harm in telling Justin Fields, because they already gave him the notice about the reps, so he probably knew this was coming. But what's the harm with starting Justin Fields? And then if it goes sideways or they start losing, then you put in Russell Wilson, say we're going to provide a spark. Because I feel like the Steelers are chasing something here. Because their offensive numbers have not been great. They're not doing great in total offense. Their passing offense is towards the bottom of the NFL. You know, you've got guys like Bo Nix and Bryce Young are orchestrating offenses that are putting up better numbers in the pass game. And I feel like they're chasing that. You know, and maybe that's for the long term. Maybe they're looking ahead saying, hey, if we want to go deep in the playoffs or if we want to win a Super Bowl, we have to get there. Yeah. But I don't like, I'm with you. I don't like messing with a winning formula, which is what they've got right now.
Yeah.
Well, B-Mac, I want to ask you, because you said you played, well, not you said, but obviously you played for Tomlin, and you talked about chemistry and all of those things. Do you see this being a locker room adjustment? I don't want to say issue, because I know Tomlin is very good about getting his guys all on board and about winning and about, you know, the main thing is the main thing. But can you see there being a little bit of a locker room divide? Can you see them kind of losing some of that steam, losing that continuity? Because when you just throw somebody out there in weeks, what is this, week 6 now? I mean, that changes a lot of things.
Not initially. I think the guys respect Coach T as a head coach. They follow his leadership as well, and they know that he puts them in the best position to be successful. But I will say this, the humanly part of all of us, what happens the first sack or the second sack with Russell in the pocket? As players, we sit on the sideline as defenders, hey, Justin would have made a miss. Justin would have got out of that.
Offensive players, too.
You know, the offensive line. You know, you'd be like, well, we know Justin could make somebody miss. You know, Russ might not give you the same types of skill set. But like I said, to be determined, it remains to be seen. They're in a good spot. But I would have said, Justin, you stay in the lineup until you show us otherwise.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like walking off the blackjack table after hitting 21. I don't think none of us are doing that.
No.
Exactly.
Definitely not me. But, you know, we did hear Mike Tomlin earlier this week said this was a decision they were going to keep in-house. But we also heard the same day George Pickens spill the beans just a little bit, saying that he was working with Russell Wilson after practice. You know, obviously we trust Mike Tomlin here, but I think the right move we will find out. And maybe the right move to force the Jets defense also to prepare for both of these guys. So we'll leave it there. All right, moving on now to college football. We got games to get to. Week 8 of the season almost underway. We have eyes on Deion Burks this morning. Our own Matt Zenitz reports that the Oklahoma wide receiver will be a game time decision for today's game against South Carolina. Burks is dealing with a lower body injury and hasn't played since the Sooners' loss to Tennessee last month. Kickoff is slated for that game at 12:45 Eastern in Norman. Now for our parlay pick of the day, presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Make every moment more. You notice we're switching things up this week.
Welcome back, Kim.
We got the full set. It's not just Mackenzie, because the whole crew wants to get in on this. They all want to make some money, so let's do it. I'm starting things off strong.
Right.
You ready for this?
Let's hear it.
No surprise, because I did say this on the Cover 3 podcast. You should go ahead and listen to that episode on Thursday.
Drum roll for Jordan's pick.
Thank you, Colorado money line. No surprise, I think Arizona was most recently exposed by BYU. You're acting shocked. I'll add another 9 legs onto this. I will add. I'm not scared about that.
Me and Ken's both had Arizona money line on our picks earlier this show.
This is perfect for me.
Letting the rest of you in on
No, listen, Travis Hunter is back. Who knows how many snaps he's limited to? I don't care. I don't care. Arizona is not going to keep pace with Colorado's offense. So give me the Buffs on the money line. Who you got? Pressure's on, because if you're the reason we lose, it's not going to be good.
Hold on, because I was going to say, first of all, I express more disappointment over yours.
We don't know yours. No, we don't know. By the way, nobody knows what we're picking.
Give me my drum roll, please. Come on now, come on now, come on now. Give me Louisville money line.
Okay.
Miami, and this This is
I don't hate it.
This is why Miami's been playing some sloppy football the past couple of weeks now, and they've been getting away with it week after week after week. That's going to catch up with you at some point. You cannot keep slopping away games and just expect to win them because Cam Ward is a Heisman or could potentially be a Heisman finalist, and you're just overmatching these teams. Eventually, that is going to catch up to you. I go back to Cam Ward. I love the brother. I love his game. He's spectacular. He's sensational. He's all the things. But to me, his greatest downfall could be his greatest asset, and that's how casual he is. We see the uncharacteristic turnovers from time to time. We see him loose with the ball. I think that catches up with him today. Give me Louisville money line.
I think this leg is the reason that I had to like bring us back down to earth here. Our odds started to get like
now watch Ken's be the one that loses us as part of
odds too much could never.
Yeah, I know
be.
it's hard for you to believe, Jordan. So I'm going to take the Nebraska-Indiana under here. Now I did get to buy it up, so we have a higher total that we get to go under now. So we're bought it up to 57.5.
Okay.
So we just need to go under 57.5. I believe the normal total is like 46.5. So a lot more wiggle room. Point being, this is the first legit defense I feel like Indiana is playing, and I want to give them their flowers for what they have done, but this Nebraska defense, not the best in the country, certainly will quickly humble this Indiana offense here. And you look at the Nebraska side of the ball, you are not winning this game in a shootout. So you need to control the clock. You need to control time of possession here, and that's what they should do with a true freshman quarterback.
I really wanted to go off the radar, like a sicko mode play, like cover 3, but I went a little more mainstream. I went with an underplay, even though you do say unders are for losers. I'm going to take it Oklahoma, South Carolina. It's in Norman.
Yeah.
The one thing that makes me nervous, I gave this pick yesterday. Deion Burke's coming back for Oklahoma, maybe. But they have been, their offense is struggling, right? Even with Michael Hawkins Jr., he's still only his 3rd start. South Carolina goes to Norman. This is one of those desperate type of games where both teams desperately needs to win. But I think Oklahoma does more. Their defense actually has been playing pretty well. I know they gave up 34 to Texas last week, but that is not the same offense South Carolina has. So I think this is going to be an ugly, low-scoring, just bloodbath type of game. So give me the under 42.5 on that one.
Bring us home, B-Mac.
No question. I got to be the last leg on the relay team. Usually that leg can really go. Drum roll, please.
Let's do it.
My pick, I'm going with a sure thing. Texas money line. Mackenzie, you got to understand this about
jersey.
Putting money in your pockets.
This is what
That's what it's about.
The big bucks.
The wildest part of this segment, it was my idea to bring you.
Be careful with
now you have to bet it. Now
if
you
you
have to
think
bet
we're
it.
getting out of a dinner with these three with less than
You have to. You have to play this.
Let's see the juice. What is the juice on this? Anyway, we'll show you the recap here of our. This is 5-leg parlay.
Essentially 20 to 1 here. We're looking at.
Sign me up.
Just about.
Sign me up. You know, anything less than 10 to 1. I'm out.
And play. I'm putting it on. Let's go.
All right, perfect. We'll roll with your money.
Guys.
We'll roll with some house money there.
Big Bang Hank.
All right, well, good news for you at home. We have a promo code for you right now as new FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. That's guaranteed. Plus, all customers get a profit boost every single college football Saturday. All you got to do, scan that QR code on your screen to start tackling some bets on America's #1 sportsbook. What are we doing with our winnings? I don't know.
Going to Vegas. If I hit that 10 grand.
Let's ride on the PJ.
How many transfusions?
I love it. All right, we're not too far removed from kickoff, which means it's time to make some game picks. That's on the other side. Stay with us. back here on College Football Pregame presented by FanDuel. The countdown to noon kickoffs begin, taking you all the way up to those games. Before we get to our game picks, you guys.
Oh, you're right where you need to be.
He is like Ken's has a slight lead here.
Yeah.
She went 8
Now,
and
wait a
5
minute.
with her best bets. Danny, very on brand of you, 7 and 6.
No, this is actually an improvement from if you look at the overall record. It's actually getting better. Yes.
41.
But how are we
okay,
doing on cover 3,
62.
Ken?
Well, that's a different show.
Okay.
But here's the thing I don't understand.
What?
I don't understand. Are you picking different? You're just making
Yeah.
different picks and you're supposed to
No.
switch it
We
up?
don't tell each other our picks. We're just opposite sides a lot of times.
That's good. That's great.
It is
Okay,
good.
all right, switching it up. I like it.
Yeah, you got a decision to make. Who are you going to fade? Who are you going to follow?
I get it.
know.
All right, you guys, we have a ton of good matchups in this noon slate. Here is a look at some of the notable injuries that could play a role in our first game to get into between Auburn and Missouri. Missouri's star receiver Luther Burden is good to go after getting hurt versus UMass just a week ago, and running back Nate Noel is off of the injury report. Good to go there. Very good news. Marquise Johnson is a game time decision for Mizzou, and for Auburn, linebacker Jamonta Waller has been ruled out. Let's go ahead and lock in our first noon slate game pick here. Mackenzie, what's attractive to you here in this one from Missouri?
Listen, we were really high on Missouri at the beginning of this year, and while they have let us down in a multitude of spots, one thing they are good at is beating up on bad teams here. So I'm comfortable laying the points with Missouri in this game. It becomes a turnover battle here that Missouri is winning 9 times out of 10. They have an awesome run D as well, allowing 3.4 yards per carry. So they're going to have to force Peyton Thorne to throw the football, and I think we all know how that ends up turning out. So I do feel comfortable with Missouri here.
I like Missouri too. I think Auburn's got way too many issues at the quarterback position. Nothing has been going good for Auburn this year. I think this is an easy win. Missouri, there's a lot more than we expected from them, but I think this is a game, like Ken said, they're going to handle this no problem. So I'm going Mizzou.
I'm with you. Nate Noel coming back. I think that's a huge asset for Brady Cook. Luther Burden being probable. That's another good sign. I think Mizzou gets it done at home, wins and covers.
Mizzou. I do not trust anything coming from Auburn football-wise.
All right, Mizzou across the board there. Let's get now to one of the most notable and also surprising ranked matchups in the Big Ten this season when Nebraska and Indiana meet in Bloomington later on today. Let's get you an injury report from Bloomington. Nebraska standout corner Tommy Hill. We've been keeping you posted throughout the entire morning on his status. He is participating in pregame warmups right now and is expected to play versus unbeaten Indiana at noon. And the Hoosiers will have one of their top defensive players in linebacker Jalen Walker back. Let's go ahead and get a game pick here. Mackenzie, what are you eyeing? This points total here set at 49.5. Where are you leaning?
It's crazy because I just continue to take unders after saying.
Are you sick?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know when the unders started coming in, but after going 8 and 5 last week, you know, you got to do what you got to do. We are going with an under again today. We're looking at a Nebraska offense that cannot win this game in a shootout. For them, it has to be control this game on the ground. You have a true freshman quarterback as well. Control the time of possession. Now for Indiana, love to give them their flowers for what they have done. However, this might be the best defense they have faced yet in Nebraska. And while there is a good chance, you know, they can still come out on top of this game, I just think it will take them a little bit more than it has earlier this season. So I think we still stay under the game total for this one.
This was a tough one for me, I'm not going to lie. But when I break it down, when I look at this matchup, I look at who's got the better quarterback. And right now, it's Indiana. Curtis Rourke has arguably been the best transfer pickup in all of college football. I put him right up there with Diego Pavia and Cam Ward in Miami. This guy has been sensational. The leap that Indiana offense has made because of him is astronomical, and you cannot deny it. So Dylan Raiola and this Nebraska team, he's good, he's talented, but I just don't think they can get it done today.
You are absolutely right on Curtis Rourke. He has been phenomenal. What a find for Kirk Cignetti and that staff. You know, they brought a lot of players. There's so much continuity. They're one of the best stories in all of college football. I'm going to pick them to win the game, but as far as the play, and I just want it to be noted, I did make this play actually, and it was a little bit higher, so I feel a little bit better about it. It's coming down a little bit. on cover 3 before Ken's. I think she saw my pick and actually hopped on board and tried to tail my picks.
Said
but
no
I'm actually on the under as well. So I do think, and like you said, I think this is Indiana's biggest challenge. It's their toughest offensive and defensive line they've faced so far this year. So that high-powered offense, I think, will be challenged, especially Tommy Hill coming back for Nebraska. And then Dylan Raiola on the road. He hasn't been quite the same against better competition. He hasn't really been as prolific as he was early this season. So I think a lower scoring game.
If this game was happening in Lincoln, I would take Nebraska. But to your point about being on the road, I think this is Indiana's first sellout, something like that, if I'm not mistaken, which is going to be huge when it comes to momentum and energy in the building. Rourke has been unbelievable, 14 touchdowns with only 2 interceptions. I think some of those same successful trends follow, so give me the Hoosiers and not the basketball team.
I'm glad that you both, all of you guys really brought up Rourke, on pace right now to break multiple single-season Indiana passing records. He has been amazing to watch in his progression as a passer. Let's go ahead and switch gears to the ACC here. Number 6, Miami at Louisville. Take a look at the injuries that you should know ahead of this one. 6th-ranked Miami should have offensive lineman Jalen Rivers available against Louisville today, but corner Damari Brown is likely to be sidelined for the Cardinals. Running back Maurice Turner and receiver Jimmy Callaway are both questionable. Let's get a game pick. Mackenzie, who you got?
This is a massive, massive game for Miami, and it's because SMU would win that head-to-head with the Louisville win that they had earlier this year. So Miami does have to win this game to stay in the playoff race. So obviously major motivation for them here. With that said, I do like Louisville to cover this game. If this was at a neutral field, we'd have this as a touchdown win for Miami, but they turn the ball over on the road, and Louisville plays clean football at home, and that really is just what this game comes down to. They've been great against the spread at home, so I do think Louisville wants to give Miami a run for their money tonight.
You know who you're going
with. You guys know who I'm going with, and I've already said it. Because
and it better be right.
To me, this game is not about Louisville. This is all about Miami and Cam Ward. Can he take care of the football? Can he be efficient? Can he not have the uncharacteristic turnovers? And can they play a clean football game? If they do that, then I definitely expect Miami to win, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I'm a product of what I've seen is what I expect, and that's Miami casually winning games and just squeaking away, because at the end of the day, they do have the better quarterback and they do have the better players. That doesn't always happen on the road in a conference matchup. A Louisville team that is good, and like Kinsey said, they play good and clean football at home. So I expect this to be that lull, that sleep, that dropper that Miami finally has.
I agree with you. I'm going to take Louisville to win as well. From a betting perspective, I don't hate if you want to take the points. I mean, it's probably the smarter play here just to hedge a little bit, but I want you to watch somebody for me. Isaac Brown, freshman running back for Louisville, has been awesome. And guess where he's from? Homestead, Miami, going against the team he probably grew up watching, the Canes. I think he has a big day against Miami.
I'm taking Miami, unfortunately. I feel like the last 2 weeks have really opened their eyes and understanding and knowing they cannot squander away winnable games and trying to find a way to get to the ACC championship game to solidify their playoff spot. So I think what we saw the last 2 weeks and barely getting through and finding ways to win ball games will provide a sense of urgency for the Hurricanes. But if they were to lose, I'm okay with that as well.
You can't be going against the pick, though. Like, we're trying to win some money.
Hey, we are, but I gotta give my commentary from my pockets.
I do, yes, yeah. This is fair. This is fair. Well, with that, we say goodbye to all of you watching from home. Thanks so much for joining us here on College Football Pregame. For Mackenzie Brooks, Bryant McFadden, Danny Kanell, Damien Harris.
Hold on, wait.
Giorgio.
Smoke them if you got them.
Yeah, there we go. These guys are ready for a good time.
But the top. Blitz,
we'll see you next Saturday.
Blitz.
I got my parlay.